Chapter 3960. Don't let anyone in the law enforcement hall know about the situation here. Otherwise, you should be very clear about the consequences. Lin Yi warned, as long as there are any abnormal movements, I will kill him. At most, I will perish together with him. Anyway, I won't be able to live anymore. You know. Don't doubt that I can kill him before I die. Promise him first. Ma Jian shouted himself hoarse and panted, Don't talk nonsense when you go out. Ma Jian wasn't stupid. This matter was caused by him. If Niu Qiong went out and reported it to Ram Jie, then Lin Yi would definitely die, but Ma Jian wouldn't be able to live either. Even if he wasn't killed by Lin Yi, Ram Jie wouldn't let him go. He didn't report this matter and did it in private to flatter Xu Lingchong. Ram Jie protected his subordinates, but if you were to mess around in private without any rules to speak of, then the law enforcement hall would be in a mess. If Lin Yi was killed, with Xu Lingchong's help, the matter could probably be suppressed. But if it was exposed now, it would be strange if Ram Jie didn't punish him for killing his subordinate. Therefore, he was more nervous about Niu Qiong's method than Lin Yi. Okay, I promise you. Niu Qiong nodded and turned to leave. If Lin Yi's request was too excessive, he might have other thoughts. But if it was just a small matter like running errands for someone, and he knew that the other party was doing useless work, there was no need for him to take this risk. Of course, if that Xiao Ran really had a way, it would be a confrontation with someone of Xu Lingchong's level. It had nothing to do with him, so there was no need to risk Ma Jian's life. After Niu Qiong left, Lin Yi still held Ma Jian's neck with one hand. No matter what, this was a mid-stage Foundation establishment realm expert. Moreover, they were in the opponent's territory. If he relaxed even a little and the opponent broke free, he might be consigned to eternal damnation. However, Lin Yi still left him with a breath. After all, if he accidentally killed this guy, even if he really found someone to help him, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed. It's useless. It doesn't matter who you find. Our law enforcement hall never gives face to anyone. I advise you to kowtow and admit your mistake as soon as possible. Maybe I can spare your little life. Ma Jian didn't believe that the newcomer could save Lin Yi. In the end, if it was useless, then he would still have to pinch him to death. Therefore, while threatening him, he also talked about the pros and cons. Since Lin Yi didn't have the resolve to fight to the death, then there was no need for him to be afraid. Lin Yi still couldn't escape from the palm of his hand. Sooner or later, he would be crushed to death in his hands as easily as crushing an ant. Bang! Before Ma Jian could finish speaking, Lin Yi raised his hand and punched him in the stomach. Before you speak, I advise you to take a good look at your situation first. I really don't have a good personality. If I accidentally caused the death of a law enforcer like you, I would really feel sorry. Under the pain, Ma Jian's body suddenly arched like a dead shrimp. However, because his neck was grabbed by Lin Yi, he couldn't even cry out in pain. There was only a strange intermittent burp left in the interrogation room. He didn't suffocate to death because of this. One couldn't help but praise Ma Jian for his great life. After half an hour, the iron door of the interrogation room finally opened, and the first person who popped her head in was not out of Lin Yi's expectations. It was Shangguan Lena. Little junior brother, so you're really here. After seeing Lin Yi, Shangguan Lena looked happy. She jumped over and checked him up and down. How is it? How is it? Did these bastards bully you? Did they torture you or anything? Little senior sister will help you vent your anger. When Ma Jian saw this scene, he was so shocked that he almost fainted on the spot. As one of Xu Lingchong's people, he certainly recognized Shangguan Lena, the first miss of Soaring Sky Pavilion. Previously, when he was an examiner for the newcomer assessment, he had seen her twice. At that time, this miss was obviously disdainful of Lin Yi. How did it suddenly become like this? Following closely behind Shanghai Lena was Niu Qiong, who also looked like he had seen a ghost. The other person was Xiao Ran, whom Lin Yi had asked him to find. Looking at his footsteps, he seemed to have suffered some injuries. It's been hard on you. Are your injuries serious? Lin Yi nodded at Xiao Ran. He asked Niu Qiong to find Xiao Ran for this purpose. Back then, Xiao Ran had seen the little curly bear deliver a letter to him. In other words, the relationship between him and Shanghai Lena, apart from Murong Zhan and Li Zhangming, who he had met at the back mountain, was only known to Xiao Ran among the people around him. The reason why he specifically asked Niu Qiong to find Xiao Ran instead of his senior brother and the others was because of this consideration. The facts also proved that there was indeed such a tacit understanding between him and Xiao Ran. In this situation, only Shanghai Lena, the first miss, could help him out. "I'm fine." Xiao Ran smiled. Normally, as a newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion, he could not enter the core area of Soaring Pavilion at all, let alone find the first miss. Therefore, he could only find an opportunity to sneak in. Fortunately, he was lucky enough to meet Shanghai Lena. It was already very lucky that he only suffered such minor injuries. While talking, Shanghai Lena had already checked Lin Yi from head to toe. When she found that he was not injured, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. She pretended to be fierce at Ma Jian and said, "Fortunately, little junior brother is fine. Otherwise, I will go find that grim-faced ghost and let him punish you personally." Ma Jian was shocked. The grim-faced ghost that Shanghai Lena mentioned was the immediate superior of their law enforcement hall, Ram Jie. If it was someone else who said these words, he could still treat it as an alarmist and ignore it. This was because everyone knew of Gong Yangjie's arrogance. He was a strong person who did not even place the higher-ups of the three great pavilions in his eyes. The words of these people, in his ears, were not even worth a fart. However, the first Miss Shangguan in front of him was not one of them. She was not a higher-up of the three great pavilions, nor did she have any power. However, her grandfather, Shanghai Tianhua, the powerful pavilion master of Soaring Pavilion, was the only one in the three great pavilions who could tame Ram Jie. Even a 1,000-li horse needed a talent scout. The reason why Gong Yangjie was able to reach his current level was because of Shangguan Tianhua's appreciation of him. He wasn't Shangguan Tianhua's personal disciple, but he had been just a single step away from becoming one. It was not that Shanghai Tianhua looked down on him, but Shanghai Tianhua once said, "Ram Jie is the only genius I have seen in my life. No one can really teach him, except for himself." This sort of evaluation was the reason why Ram Jie had been able to roam the three great pavilions so arrogantly all these years. No one dared to point fingers at him, and he could ignore any of the so-called elders of the three great pavilions. The only exception was Shangguan Tianhua. Shanghai Lena was the only granddaughter that Shanghai Tianhua doted on. If she really wanted to find Ram Jie would definitely not make things difficult for her because of such a small matter. Moreover, this matter itself was Ma Jian who harbored evil intentions. He was instructed by Shu Lingchong to avenge a personal grudge. If this was found out by Ram Jie, he would not even know how to write the word death. "Greetings, Miss Shangguan." Ma Jian stammered as he bowed. Even if he disregarded his relationship with Ram Jie, the other party was still the first miss of Soaring Pavilion. She was not someone that a mere law enforcement officer like him could afford to offend. Chapter 3961. Alright then, this guy didn't differentiate right from wrong and tried to search my soul. I'll have to ask little senior sister to help me get back at him, Lin Yi said without hesitation. Damn. Ma Jian was so scared that he peed his pants. If the soul-searching technique was used once, he would become a fool or a cripple. If it was used 100 times or 1,000 times more, not to mention his divine sense, even his brain would be squeezed dry. Soul-searching skill? You actually want to use the soul-searching skill on junior brother? Shanghai Lena was stunned, and then she looked at Ma Jian with an extremely unfriendly gaze. With her family background, even if she didn't like to practice, she had heard of the soul-searching skill. She was clear about the side effects of this divine skill. After saying this, Shanghai Lena didn't say anything. She turned around angrily and walked out of the interrogation room, leaving everyone in the room looking at each other. Time passed by bit. Lin Yi and Xiao Ran sat aside calmly. Anyway, Shanghai Lena, the young lady, had already come forward. They didn't have to worry about the other party's tricks at all. On the contrary, Ma Jian and Niu Qiong were restless at the moment, especially Ma Jian, the mastermind, who was sweating profusely and panicking. After 30 minutes, Shanghai Lena came back. As she pushed the door and entered, she muttered to herself with dissatisfaction, "Cold-faced ghost is really unreasonable. He doesn't even want to come out to see me. He's so hateful." Hearing these words, Ma Jian immediately heaved a sigh of relief. It was fortunate that Hallmaster Gong Youngjie had a cold temperament and never paid attention to anyone. Otherwise, if this young miss really reported this to him, even if he was lucky enough not to die this time, it would be hard for him to escape punishment. However, before he had time to rejoice, he saw the two black curtain experts who followed Shanghai Lena in. His scalp immediately went numb. He felt dizzy and almost fainted on the spot. From their attire, it could be seen that these two people were different from other ordinary law enforcers. They were known as the Black Curtain Law Enforcers, and they specialized in targeting the members of the Law Enforcement Hall. If the members of the Law Enforcement Hall gave themselves away, they would suffer a fate worse than death. "Ma Jian, you're suspected of abusing your authority to take revenge. Come with us," one of the Black Curtain Law Enforcers said. Then, without giving Ma Jian any chance to speak, he took a step forward and the steel chain in his hand whizzed out. Before Ma Jian could react, he was already tightly locked by the fine steel chains. His joints were pierced by the special hooks on the steel chains. Every part of his body was so deep that his bones could be seen. Ma Jian didn't even have the chance to struggle. With a miserable howl, he fell to the ground. Every time he struggled, he would feel excruciating pain. He could only howl miserably as the Black Curtain Law Enforcers dragged him like a dead dog. He was dragged away in front of everyone. Lin Yi and Xiao Rant's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. The Law Enforcement Hall was indeed a notoriously vicious place. Their cruel methods were truly outrageous. It was better not to come here in the future. When he was about to be dragged to the door, Ma Jian gritted his teeth and struggled to turn his head to look at Shanghai Lena and Lin Yi. He said unwillingly, You didn't see the Hall Master. How did this happen?" Shanghai Lena stuck out her tongue. She shrugged like Lin Yi did in the past and said, "I didn't see that cold-faced ghost, but these two guys said that they received orders from cold-faced ghost to settle this matter for me. So, I brought them here." After hearing this, Ma Jian rolled his eyes and passed out on the spot. Then, he was really like a dead dog. He couldn't even make a sound as he was dragged away by the Black Curtain Law Enforcers. As for what would happen to him in the end, no one knew. Anyway, he would definitely be miserable if he fell into the hands of the Black Curtain Law Enforcers. Looking at this scene, Lin Yi was secretly shocked. Ram Jie was indeed a famous and powerful figure. Nothing that happened in the Law Enforcement Hall could escape his eyes and ears. The only difference was whether he wanted to ask about it or not. He had no choice but to rejoice. Fortunately, his reaction had been fast enough, and he had thought of asking Shangguan Lan'er for help. Otherwise, if the soul-searching technique had really been used on him, and all his secrets had fallen into Gong Youngjie's eyes, he would never be able to leave the Law Enforcement Hall. "Okay, I've vented my anger. This place is so dark and smelly. Let's leave this place quickly." Shanghai Lena frowned and covered her nose. If it weren't for saving Lin Yi, she wouldn't be willing to come to the Law Enforcement Hall. The three of them immediately left the Law Enforcement Hall. Shanghai Lena immediately separated from Lin Yi because she had something to deal with at home. Before leaving, she said, "It's my birthday in a few days. Junior brother, don't forget to come." After saying that, she didn't give Lin Yi a chance to speak. She waved her hand and skipped away. "Birthday?" Lin Yi shook his head with a bitter smile. He had heard this news a long time ago. At that time, Meng Jueguang used the excuse of preparing a birthday gift for someone to exchange waste jade for good jade. However, he didn't expect that it was prepared for his senior sister. With the friendship between Lin Yi and Shanghai Lena, such an important day couldn't be neglected. Not to mention that the other party had helped him a lot today. He had to take the opportunity to thank her. However, with Shanghai Lena's identity as the First Lady of Soaring Sky Pavilion, whether she was willing or not, there would inevitably be a grand birthday party. At that time, with the identity of a newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion, whether or not Lin Yi could get the admission was a big problem. After all, this was basically equivalent to a high-level banquet of the three pavilions. Ordinary people couldn't enter this circle at all. For the arrival of a newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion like him, Shanghai Lena was of course very happy, but others might not think so. Forget it, if it really doesn't work, I can only bite the bullet and go. Anyway, there's no need to stay for too long. It's good to send my regards. Lin Yi had to make such a decision. Fortunately, he didn't care much about his face. Even if he was criticized by others, he wouldn't take it to heart. With the return of Lin Yi and Xiao Ran to the Welcome Pavilion, it meant that the mine collapse storm had finally come to an end. Many newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion who remained on the sidelines or were hoping for a fluke must adjust their mentality and prepare to welcome the arrival of a new era. The era of Meng Jueguang had come to an end. In any case, the sudden death of Meng Jueguang had brought a huge power vacuum to the Welcome Pavilion. The competition between various forces had just begun. Chapter 3962. Because of Meng Jueguang's love letter, this miss obviously hated Lin Yi to death. Why did she suddenly show up and take the initiative to save Lin Yi? The death of Meng Jueguang was a big blow to Xu Lingchong. Now because of Lin Yi, not only did he lose Ma Jian, but he also suddenly found that Miss Shangguan's attitude began to become unclear with Lin Yi. Such continuous blows, even young Master Xu could not help but be a little confused. Shangguan Lena had always been young Master Xu's exclusive property. No one could touch her. Anyone who had a little evil intention would immediately be killed. As for Lin Yi, a new bumpkin from the secular world, the gap between him and Miss Shangguan was basically the gap between a toad and a swan. He thought that this kind of thing could not pose any threat to him, but he did not expect that the most impossible thing to happen now inexplicably showed a trace of bad signs. This was related to his future plan, and even related to the future strategy of the Xu family for the next 100 years. He could not afford to take it lightly. Xu Lingchong suddenly panicked. Even the important matter of competing with the South Sky Gate for the position of the steward of the Sky-Reaching Pavilion was temporarily put aside and mobilized people to investigate it. He must find out as soon as possible what had happened between Shangguan Lena and Lin Yi during this period. After all, Xu Lingchong was the young master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. If he really wanted to know something, it would be a piece of cake. There were very few things in the three great pavilions that could escape his eyes and ears. In the short span of a day, the truth had already come to light. As expected, the information came from Kang Ming. Although Xu Lingchong also wanted to start the investigation from Shangguan Lena, this miss's level was too high. Unless he did it himself, others could not even say a word. There was no way to find out what this miss had done before. It was easier said than done to find clues from her. Besides, who dared to investigate her? They were all people who were protected by the North Island elders. Even Ram Jie did not dare to investigate them. Therefore, in the end, Xu Lingchong could only pin his hopes on Lin Yi. Even though Meng Jueguang was dead and his control over the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion was greatly weakened, it was still much easier than directly investigating Shanghai Lena. Even without Meng Jueguang, Xu Lingchong still had a lot of people he could use in the welcoming pavilion. From the pavilion master Hu Yunfeng to Kang Ming and Zhong Pingliang. They were all his subordinates. However, after much consideration, the task still fell to Kang Ming. After all, Hu Yunfeng was the pavilion master of the welcome pavilion. If she came out to investigate this kind of thing, it would be easy for others to get hold of her. It was not as convenient as Kang Ming. After receiving Xu Lingchong's letter, Kang Ming did not feel it was troublesome. Instead, he was overjoyed. Now, because of the sudden death of Meng Jueguang, the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion were completely in a state of disunity. It was the easiest time to be taken advantage of. His identity as a newcomer deacon might not have much of a deterrent effect, but if he had Xu Lingchong's young master aura, that would be a big difference. After a group of newcomers of Soaring Pavilion clarified their background, they had already begun to move, intending to replace him. This was a cross-pavilion challenge. After he was crushed by Lin Yi in an almost humiliating way, his performance was particularly obvious, and it could even be said that he did not hide it. Kang Ming was very clear. Even if he had Xu Lingchong, the young master, behind him, It was no longer as easy as it was at the beginning to suppress the newcomers of Soaring Pavilion. After all, they had found their own strong backing. Just like Shi Yuda, they did not need to be afraid of him anymore. Since he could not suppress the newcomers of Soaring Pavilion, Kang Mingming could only settle for second best and think of ways to recruit subordinates from other places. Originally, because of Meng Jueguang, no matter how eager he was, he could not stretch his hands into Blue Cloud Pavilion. After all, Meng Jueguang was also Xu Lingcheng's subordinate. Wouldn't that be internal strife? But now, the situation was different. In his eyes, the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion were like a piece of juicy meat, waiting for him to take a bite. Xu Lingcheng's order came at the right time. With that thought in mind, Kang Mingming went straight to the newcomer's cave abode in Blue Cloud Pavilion. He had a clear goal, which was to directly knock on the door and enter Murongzhen's wooden house. If he wanted to successfully take over Meng Jueguang's subordinates, he had to first subdue his two subordinates. One was Meng Tong, and the other was Murongzhen. As for Lin Yi, he did not even need to think about it. Now that Meng Tong was still seriously injured and was recuperating in seclusion, Kang Mingming's first target naturally became Murongzhen. Deacon Kang, it's my honor to have you visit my wooden house in person. Murongzhen purposely pretended to be a graceful lady in front of Kang Mingming. She smiled faintly, which was mesmerizing. As expected, her alluring beauty made Kang Mingming drool. He almost drooled, which made him look like a lecher. He had been at Heaven Stage Island for half a year, but he did not know what a woman was. Normal people really could not resist the temptation of a beauty like Murongzhen. This was especially true for Kang Mingming. When he was in the secular world, he could only stay with the ugly 11th, who was covered in scars, because of the Shenzhen patriarch's power. He dared not touch other women. Fortunately, after being dazzled for a long time, Kang Mingming finally remembered the purpose of his visit. He forced himself to calm down and said, "Lady Murong, I'm here to ask you something. If you know anything, please enlighten me. Please go ahead, Deacon Kang. I'll definitely tell you everything I know." Murongzhen bowed gracefully. This woman had always been used to it. Moreover, she was in her own wooden house, so she was wearing very little. Kang Mingming could not help but feel his heart heat up again. Kang Mingming licked his lips because his mouth was dry. He then said, "Lady Murong, you live in this wooden house. You should know what Lin Yi does every day and who he interacts with. So, do you know what happened between Lin Yi and Lady Shangguan?" Lady Shangguan? Murongzhen narrowed her eyes. There was only one person who could be called Lady Shangguan in the three great pavilions. Naturally, it was Shanghai Lena. For a moment, Murongzhen could not help but hesitate. Kang Mingming had asked the right person. Of course, she knew what happened between Lin Yi and Shanghai Lena. However, it was not convenient for her to tell Kang Mingming about what happened at the half-moon lake at the back of the mountain. Chapter 3963. Back then, she had merely said something about Shanghai Lena, and she was trampled from the sky to the ground. She was banished to a newbie in Blue Cloud Pavilion. If the incident at the half-moon lake at the back of the mountain was exposed, she would be dismembered by Xu Lingcheng's men. "Why? Is there something you don't want to tell me, Lady Murong?" Kang Jiaoming was a sharp thinker. One look at Murongzhen's face and he knew that there was more to it than meets the eye. If it was someone else, they wouldn't have known who Miss Shangguan was, but Murongzhen was from Chongtian Pavilion. There was no way he didn't know. Murongzhen was shocked. She quickly forced a smile and tried to smooth things over. "You misunderstood me, Officer Kang. I was just trying to recall if I've seen something like this before." "Oh, does Miss Murong remember anything?" Kang Jiaoming continued to greedily size up the woman's alluring body as he asked calmly. "To tell you the truth, Steward Kang, I just remembered something. Back then, when I was taking part in the spiritual beast assessment at the back of the mountain, I happened to see Lady Shangguan appearing at the back of the mountain out of nowhere. She was alone too. She was attacked by the spiritual beast at that time, but Lin Yi showed up and saved her," Murongzhen said half-truthfully. This was the most beneficial thing for her. Not only could she remove herself from the matter, but she could also use the ambiguous relationship between Lin Yi and Shanghai Lena to add fuel to the fire between Xu Lingchong and Lin Yi. No matter which one of them was at a disadvantage, it would not be a bad thing for her. Apart from that, she could also curry favor with Kang Mingming by revealing this matter. After all, Meng Jueguang was dead. Facing Lin Yi, who was getting more powerful by the day, she could not fight him alone. She had to find external help as soon as possible, and Kang Mingming was the perfect candidate. Firstly, although Kang Xiaoming's strength wasn't strong, he had Xu Lingchong as his backer. Furthermore, he was an alchemist. His purpose wasn't to charge and break through enemy lines, so he didn't need to place too much emphasis on strength. Moreover, there was a blood feud between him and Lin Yi in the secular world. The enemy of the enemy was a natural ally. In Murongzhen's eyes, if she made good use of Kang Mingming, her role would not be any less than that of Meng Jueguang. Not only could she use him to deal with Lin Yi, but if the opportunity was right, she could even use him to climb up to Xu Lingchong again. That would be the day she could make a name for herself. Lin Yi saved Lady Shangguan's life. This guy is so lucky. Kang Mingming was shocked and he could not help but feel envious. To be able to save Miss Shangguan's life was a blessing that couldn't be reaped even in a few lifetimes. If he used such a huge favor well, he would be able to achieve meteoric success in the future. Why didn't he, Kang Xiaoming, have such a good opportunity? That's right. I heard people say that Lady Shangguan hated Lin Yi. Now that she has such an opportunity, he might be able to turn over a new leaf and become a phoenix. Murongzhen added fuel to the fire. Fly up the branches and transform into a phoenix. Dream on. Kang Mingming was so angry that he gritted his teeth. However, he would not be fooled so easily. He asked in confusion, since Lady Murong happened to be there, why didn't you help him? It's better to do Lady Shangguan a favor than to let Lin Yi have all the glory, right? Murongzhen paused for a while, then she pretended to be weak and said, I am no match for Lin Yi. If I showed up at that time, I'm afraid he would kill me. I see. Kang Mingming looked at her suspiciously, but he did not continue to ask. This answer was enough to give Xu Lingchong an explanation. Next, it was his own business. It depended on whether Murongzhen was sensible. If she was sensible, she would come to him obediently, and there would be nothing to say. Otherwise, when Kang Mingming reported, he would naturally add oil to the fire and let Murongzhen appear at the scene to see how she would die. It had to be said that Kang Mingming was quite a sinister person. He thought of a way to threaten Murongzhen in an instant. However, before Kang Xiaoming could speak, Murongzhen tactfully took the initiative and said, It's already dark. If Deacon Kang doesn't mind, why don't you stay in my wooden house for the night? Kang Mingming's eyes suddenly lit up. He rubbed his hands eagerly, but he pretended to be reserved and said, Lady Murong, we are a man and a woman alone. Is this appropriate? What's wrong with that? It's my honor that Deacon Kang is willing to do me this favor, Murongzhen said with her charming eyes. She stretched her hands to her waist and slowly untied her belt. Murongzhen knew very well that with her strength at the peak of the early stage of the building foundation realm, she could only intimidate ordinary newcomers. Her body was her biggest asset. Just like how she won over Meng Jueguang, if she wanted to hook up with Kang Mingming, going to bed with him was not only unavoidable, but it was also the most important first step. Only when it was on the bed, men were most likely to relax and let down their guard. When the pillow wind blew, any request would be easy. That was the so-called lust makes one lose his mind. Leaving aside the fact that Kang Mingming and Murongzhen were in cahoots, after a night of pleasure, a letter was finally sent to Xu Lingchong's hands. I see. Xu Lingchong read it carefully and he finally understood. Young Master Xu had chased after Shangguan Lena for so many years, so he knew this young lady's temperament like the back of his hand. Although she had the temperament of a young lady, she was a person who would repay favors. If Lin Yi really did save her life, then no matter how much she hated Lin Yi, she would definitely help him if he needed her help at a critical moment. This could explain why she went to the law enforcement hall to help Lin Yi out of trouble. However, although he thought this way, young Master Xu was still a little worried. What was Shangguan Lan Er's attitude towards Lin Yi? He had to ask her face to face. After all, the common scene of a hero saving a damsel in distress was too common. Even if the young lady didn't like the poor guy at first, it was not impossible for her to change her attitude and fall in love with the poor guy after he saved her life. Xu Lingchong had to be careful. Well. Faced with Xu Lingchong's question, Shangguan Lan'er tilted her head, and suddenly said with a smile, "As you said, I don't want to owe him a favor, so I naturally have to help him. Is there anything else?" Xu Lingchong asked. Chapter 3964. No, I just want to show my concern. That brat Lin Yi is a good-for-nothing. This is something that is obvious to all in the Welcome Pavilion. I'm just afraid that junior sister Lan'er will be deceived by him and be sad at that time. Xu Lingchong hurriedly smiled apologetically. If that's the case, then you can rest assured. This young lady's eyesight is very good, and I won't be easily deceived by some people. Shanghai Lena raised the corner of her mouth and said. She deliberately spoke very vaguely, but when it fell into Xu Lingchong's ears, the meaning was quite clear. That was, this young lady's eyesight was very high, and it was impossible for her to be deceived by a poor newcomer like Lin Yi. Little did he know that this was only Xu Lingchong's own wishful thinking. In the heart of Shanghai Lena, the meaning was completely opposite. Some people in her words were actually referring to him, young Master Xu. That's good. Xu Lingchong could be said to be closely involved in the situation. If the other party was changed to someone else, he probably would have noticed that something was wrong. Unfortunately, the person in front of him was Lan'er. In front of the goddess that men yearn for, their intelligence would always be in the negative, and young Master Xu was no exception. This guy is really a big idiot. Shanghai Lena secretly laughed. She was happy to let this idiot Xu Lingchong misunderstand by himself. The relationship between her and Lin Yi was a secret between her and Lin Yi, and she didn't want this annoying Xu Lingchong to know. "Oh, that's right, junior sister Lan'er. It has been decided that I will host your birthday banquet for you. If you have any ideas or requests, feel free to tell me. No matter what kind of wish it is, I will definitely do my best to help you realize it," Xu Lingchong said with an excited face. Being able to host Shanghai Lena's birthday banquet meant that he had already obtained the preliminary approval of Shanghai Tianhua, or at least it was already tacit approval. This was the first step to becoming the son-in-law of Shanghai Tianhua, and to Xu Lingchong, its significance wasn't the slightest bit inferior to fighting for the position of manager of the Skysaw Pavilion. With this opportunity, not only could he stabilize his relationship with Shangguan Lena, but he could also further improve his position in the three great pavilions. One had to know that this was a banquet for the upper echelons of the three great pavilions. Being the host of this banquet meant that one could directly communicate with all the upper echelons of the three great pavilions. There was no need to go into detail about the benefits. Unexpectedly, Shanghai Lena, the protagonist of the birthday party, was not interested in this. She waved her hand and said, "Do whatever you want. Anyway, it will not be the birthday party that I want. In the end, it will only become a power trade fair for you. I am not interested." A long time ago, Shanghai Lena still had all kinds of expectations and fantasies about the rare birthday party. But gradually, she found that it was completely different from what she had imagined. In the end, this was just a networking event held by the upper echelons of the three great pavilions in the name of her birthday party. As for whether she, the protagonist, was there or not, it didn't matter at all. If one had to talk about expectations, it was her only expectation for this birthday party. It could only be on Lin Yi. At that time, it was estimated that only this little junior brother would sincerely celebrate her birthday. Sure enough, she still had the temperament of a little girl. Seeing this, Xu Lingchong smiled indifferently. Whether Shanghai Lena was happy or not, it was not important to him. The only important thing was that this time was an excellent opportunity for him to show his ability in front of all the upper echelons of the three great pavilions. He must not easily waste it. That Lin Yi. Do you want to let him attend this birthday party? Xu Lingchong suddenly suggested. Shanghai Lena was slightly taken aback. She was very clear that her little junior brother Lin Yi was a thorn in Xu Lingchong's side. Would this guy be so kind as to take the initiative to invite Lin Yi to attend her birthday party? Junior sister Lan didn't you say that you want to return his favor? Originally, a low-level newcomer with no status like him is not qualified to attend such a high-class banquet. If you give him this opportunity, coupled with the help you gave him before, the so-called favor should be cleared, right? Xu Lingchong explained with a sinister smile. Of course, this was not his real intention, but a flash of inspiration in his mind. He suddenly thought of a brilliant idea to deal with Lin Yi. No matter how tyrannical and abnormal Lin Yi's strength was, in the end, he was just a newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion. He could not be seen in public at all. If he invited Lin Yi to the birthday party where the upper echelons of the three great pavilions gathered, then let him make a fool of himself in front of all the upper echelons of the three great pavilions and take the opportunity to humiliate him. Wouldn't it be killing two birds with one stone to let Shanghai Lena see this guy's humble and embarrassing true face? Moreover, once Lin Yi left a negative impression in the eyes of the upper echelons of the three great pavilions, then even if he entered the inner sect in the future, there would be no future to speak of. Well, let's do it this way. Shanghai Lena immediately agreed readily. She was too lazy to guess what despicable intentions Xu Lingchong had. Anyway, Lin Yi would definitely be able to solve it when the time came. Moreover, at the very least, there was still her, the main character of the birthday party, so it was impossible for Lin Yi to suffer a big loss. Okay. Xu Lingchong smiled sinisterly and thought to himself, then wait to watch a good show. On the other hand, several days had passed since the death of Meng Jueguang, and the power struggle within the Welcome Pavilion had finally begun to take shape. Currently, the position that received the most attention in the Welcome Pavilion was the position of the third pavilion master. This important position originally belonged to Meng Jueguang, but because of Meng Jueguang's death, it suddenly became empty. Some people once thought that the former third pavilion master, Lu Bianren, might have a chance to make a comeback. After all, he was forced to leave by Meng Jueguang. Now that Meng Jueguang was no longer around, and the new members of the Blue Cloud Pavilion were in a state of panic, it was not impossible for the upper echelons to transfer the former third pavilion master back to stabilize the situation. However, today, an appointment came from within the Blue Cloud Pavilion, which made everyone's eyes pop out. Lu Bianren, the former third pavilion master who was forced to leave by Meng Jueguang, was now promoted to the position of the second senior brother in charge of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. This appointment was really beyond everyone's expectations. Even senior brother Ku Bai and Lin Yi, who were in the same faction as Lu Bianren, were so shocked that their teeth almost fell off when they heard it. The position of the second senior brother in charge of the Blue Cloud Pavilion in Blue Cloud Pavilion was the same position that Xu Lingchong currently held in Soaring Sky Pavilion. Strictly speaking, it belonged to the same level as the third pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion. Therefore, this change in Lu Bianren's position could be considered as a flat transfer. Chapter 3965. However, before this, Lu Bianren didn't have any foundation in Blue Cloud Pavilion. Even if he became the second senior brother supervisor of Blue Cloud Pavilion, it was still unknown how effective his authority would be. Perhaps in the end, he would end up in the same situation as when he was in the Welcoming Pavilion, where he would be taken over by others. Not to mention Lu Bianren's future prospects, he was already the second senior brother supervisor of Blue Cloud Pavilion, so it was naturally impossible for him to return to the Welcoming Pavilion. Apart from him, there was no suitable candidate that could satisfy all parties. As a result, the position of the third pavilion master of Welcome Pavilion was temporarily vacant. In addition, the other position left by Meng Jueguang's death, the eldest senior brother supervisor of Blue Cloud Pavilion, was finally revealed, and the successor was senior brother Bitter. There was no doubt about this. Senior brother Bitter had been the second senior brother supervisor of Blue Cloud Pavilion for many years under Meng Jueguang. He had enough experience, and now that he had broken through to the peak of the early stage of foundation establishment, his strength was also sufficient. More importantly, among the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion, Lin Yi's group was undoubtedly the strongest. This was something that no one could stop. Anyone who wanted to sit in this position had to get Lin Yi's approval. To be able to get Lin Yi's approval, this person could only be senior brother Bitter. The higher-ups wouldn't have too many thoughts about this kind of low-level position. Naturally, stability was the main priority. Senior Brother Bitter's appointment was unusually smooth from beginning to end. However, as a result, Senior Brother Bitter's original position as the second Senior Brother Supervisor of Blue Cloud Pavilion was once again vacant. Just like the third Pavilion Master position, it was left unfilled for a long time. If Lin Yi wanted to, this position would probably fall into his hands in a minute. Unfortunately, he didn't like this insignificant new manager at all. Even if it was delivered to his door, he wouldn't want it. If Lin Yi didn't want it, then Xiao Ran, Qiao Hongcai, and the other subordinates of his were even more unwilling. After all, his underlings had unexpectedly become the Senior Brother Supervisor. Was this reasonable? As for Meng Tong's group, they had some thoughts about it. Unfortunately, they didn't have the protection of Meng Jueguang, and it was a problem for them to protect themselves under the threat of Lin Yi. On the contrary, Mu Rongzhen was a little excited. She had just recently gotten close to Kang Jiaoming. Senior Brother Bitter, how's the situation? Lin Yi asked as they gathered together once more. He was naturally asking about Ku Bai Shixiang's situation after he became the head senior brother of the newcomers. Not bad. Now that Meng Jueguang has fallen, in addition to junior brother Lin's influence, other than a few newcomers, everyone else has taken the initiative to approach us. The situation is very good, the honest senior brother Bitter said with a rare excitement. Ever since Meng Jueguang's death, the Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples had been observing from the sidelines. It was only when he became the eldest senior brother in charge of the new disciples that they finally made their decision. After Cha Wu was the first to take the initiative, the other newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion also came over. The situation was indeed good. Senior Meng Jueguang had been working in Welcoming Pavilion for so many years, but he had always been a good-for-nothing. Usually, when he was wronged, he didn't even dare to make a sound. When had he ever felt so proud? For the first time in his life, Senior Meng Jueguang felt the prestige of being the senior brother supervisor. It was like the legendary surf singing, and it was all thanks to Lin Yi. A few. Who are they? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. Mu Rongzhen, Meng Tong, and two other newcomers. There were also two newcomers who seemed to have a connection with Kang Jiaoming from Soaring Pavilion. They are prepared to continue resisting us. Speaking of this, Senior Meng Jueguang couldn't help but worry. He wasn't a person who was good at fighting. If Lin Yi didn't help him, whether it was Mu Rongzhen or Meng Tong, it would be more than enough for him to suffer. They hooked up with Kang Mingming. They really don't give up. Lin Yi smiled indifferently. He didn't take it to heart. With his current strength, if he still took these people seriously, then he would be underestimating himself. A dog can't stop eating shit. I don't find it strange that they did this, but there was someone who surprised me. Qiao Hongcai said. Before he finished speaking, Xiao Ran had already said the name he was about to blurt out, Li Zhengming. There was no sign beforehand. The fact that Li Zhengming defected to them was shocking. It was strange to the point that it made people suspicious. The straightforward Qiao Hongcai couldn't help but say, "Boss, this guy isn't planning something, right?" Xiao Ran also nodded and said, from his point of view, defecting to us now is a choice forced by the situation. However, there is one thing that we must guard against. If he is faking his defection and has the intention of colluding with Meng Tong and the others, then there will be endless trouble in the future. How about I go test him? Qiao Hongcai was eager to give it a try. His so-called test was naturally a fight. It was simple, direct, and often very effective. People with ulterior motives would easily give themselves away when they fought with others. Lin Yi smiled non-committally. He didn't open his mouth to explain for Li Zhengming, nor did he come forward to stop it. Men don't get to know each other without fighting. No matter how much they talk, it's better to fight. Moreover, he also wanted to see Li Zhengming's true strength. Anyway, no matter who was injured, Lin Yi was confident that he could heal them. It would be a mutual exchange between them. Seeing that Lin Yi acquiesced, Qiao Hongcai immediately cheered and went to find Li Zhengming. He never refused to fight. Not to mention that even though his hostility towards Li Zhengming wasn't as irreconcilable as his hostility towards Meng Tong, he could still clearly remember the scene of him being defeated by Li Zhengming with a single move during the newcomer trials in the rear mountains during the first month he'd arrived at the Welcome Pavilion. He'd always taken that defeat to heart. After successfully building his foundation and his strength was reborn, Qiao Hongcai thought that he would have a chance to fight against Li Zhengming. However, he didn't expect that in the 2-month-long newcomer challenge, he would just brush past Li Zhengming. Although he successfully stepped on Meng Tong in the end, he still missed out on fighting Li Zhengming. But now, the opportunity had finally come. Lin Yi had already acquiesced, so him challenging Li Zhengming was also a rare opportunity for the other party to show his strength and fight for status. Presumably, he wouldn't reject it. In fact, it was just as Qiao Hongcai had expected. Li Zhengming only paused for a moment after hearing the challenge, and after exchanging a glance with Lin Yi, he agreed without hesitation. Chapter 3966. Unfortunately, Lin Yi didn't intend to do so. It wasn't that he was intentionally suppressing him, but on the contrary, he was actually protecting him. Although Meng Jueguang was already dead, his formidable opponents like Xu Lingchong were still around. If they were to find out that Li Zhengming was a mole from the beginning, Li Zhengming would inevitably be pushed to the heart of the struggle and become a thorn in the side of Xu Lingchong and the others. His situation would be extremely bad. Li Zhengming was well aware of this, but he didn't have any complaints. Instead, he was secretly grateful towards Lin Yi's intentions. After all, this was in line with his usual low-key style of doing things. However, low-key didn't mean that he really didn't have to do anything. Only those with strength could be called low-key. Those without strength were called cowards. If everyone came to step on you and bully you, then there would be endless trouble. Therefore, Li Zhengming was very clear that if he wanted to keep a low profile, then he had to reveal his strength at the right time to deter others. Qiao Hongcai, as the publicly acknowledged #1 general under Lin Yi, was a suitable opponent for Li Zhengming who intended to establish his might. According to the rules of the Welcome Pavilion, this battle didn't involve the use of weapons or the help of spiritual pets, and it was a pure collision of strength. Originally, Lin Yi expected that the strength of both sides should be about the same. If they were to really go all out and fight each other to the death, then it would probably end in a situation where both sides would suffer heavy losses. He was even prepared to immediately appear and stop it if anything went wrong. In reality, it was indeed as Lin Yi expected at the beginning. After a few rounds, Qiao Hongcai and Li Zhengming were evenly matched, and no one fell into a disadvantageous position. The battle between the two was so exciting and intense that even a mid-stage foundation establishment expert like Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh in admiration when he saw it. These two people were born with innate combat talent, and they were destined to never be mediocre. Once the time came, they would be like gold that had been washed out of the yellow sand, revealing their extraordinary brilliance. Lin Yi had long known that Li Zhengming had successfully built his foundation, so he was not surprised. However, the others present had never seen Li Zhengming's true strength. They had always thought that Li Zhengming was only a heaven-stage great circle expert and could not withstand a single blow from Qiao Hongcai, but he didn't expect that Li Zhengming's strength had actually reached such a level without making a sound. He was actually able to fight evenly with Qiao Hongcai, a valiant general, and they were locked in a stalemate. However, this situation of being evenly matched did not last long. Very soon, everyone realized that they had once again misjudged. Li Zhengming's strength was not only on par with Qiao Hongcai's, but he was also a powerful existence that was above Qiao Hongcai. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, Li Zhengming suddenly ended the battle without warning when Qiao Hongcai's cold iron palm was running out of strength with a perfect Skyfrost fist. Striking after the enemy, the timing is just right. Well done. Lin Yi praised sincerely, and then took the lead to applaud. Following that, senior brother Ku Bai, Xiao Ran, and the others also applauded in appreciation. In fact, even Qiao Hongcai himself couldn't help but applaud. He wholeheartedly accepted his defeat today. Li Zhengming, you're really strong. You used to be under the hands of a dirty bird like Meng Jueguang. From today onwards, no matter what others think, I, Qiao Hongcai, will treat you as my brother. Qiao Hongzai said sincerely. He was not stupid. He could clearly feel that Li Zhengming had shown mercy to him. Otherwise, he would at least be seriously injured. It was impossible for him to stand there as if nothing had happened. What's more, Qiao Hongzai seemed to be careless at first glance, but he had his own way of judging people, which was to judge people by their fists and feet. A person's fighting style could, to a large extent, tell a person's character. This was something almost instinctive. It was different from talking with flowery words, which could not be faked. From the battle just now, he could clearly feel that although Li Zhengming was very patient, when it came to a head-on confrontation, this person's courage was not inferior to anyone. It could be seen that Li Zhengming was born with a strong arrogance. Such a person would not like to play tricks, and he was not someone that a mere Meng Jueguang could really subdue. It was impossible when he was alive, and it was even more impossible when he was dead. Otherwise, with Li Zhengming's strength, he should have stood up and summoned the wind and rain, instead of being low-key and invisible. Thank you. Li Zhengming nodded heavily. Qiao Hongzai's simple words actually made his nose sour, and a dignified man almost shed tears. After being a spy under Meng Jueguang for so long, because he was destined not to see the light, he had gradually begun to get used to being alone, used to facing everything around him alone. Now that he was suddenly recognized, this feeling of being suddenly accepted by the light was not something that ordinary people could understand. Others did not know the reason, but it was impossible for Lin Yi not to know. He immediately walked over and patted his shoulder gently, smiled warmly and said, "You've worked hard, welcome back." Hearing this, Li Zhengming grinned. His smile was very unnatural, and it could even be said that his smile was very ugly. It was not that he had any thoughts in his mind, but it was a smile that came from the bottom of his heart. It was just that he had not smiled for a long time, and he had forgotten how to smile. Thinking back, in the half a year that he had been in the Welcome Pavilion, not only did he bear the heavy responsibility of being a spy for Lin Yi, but he also had to face all kinds of oppression from Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong every day. He could only endure and not resist, so naturally, he could not smile. Not to mention that the entire Clearwater Villa had been annihilated, and he was burdened with such a deep blood feud. Every day, as soon as he closed his eyes, he would see the insufferably formidable figure of his enemy in the depths of his mind, so how could he possibly smile? Your smile is really ugly. Looks like you have to practice more in the future. Otherwise, when you smile, you look like you're crying. That's too fucking scary. Qiao Hongzai did not know about these inside stories, so he immediately made a vicious comment. Li Zhengming did not know whether to laugh or cry, but he felt a little warmth in his heart. It felt good to be brothers with such a simple-minded guy. At this time, Xiao Ran walked over and smiled at Li Zhengming. "Brother Zhengming, after a few days, when you're fully recovered, why don't you come and fight with me?" For a moment, everyone was silent. Qiao Hongzai was a fighter, so they had expected him to challenge Li Zhengming. However, Xiao Ran was not that kind of person. Under normal circumstances, he would not easily fight. Previously, Qiao Hongzai had always wanted to fight with him, but he never agreed. Now, he actually took the initiative to challenge Li Zhengming. Was it because he was eager to fight, or was there a deeper meaning behind it? Chapter 3967. Seeing that there seemed to be a smell of gunpowder between the two, senior brother Ku could not help but secretly pat Lin Yi and whispered worriedly, "Junior brother Lin, aren't you going to come out and stop it? He just joined us," and he was immediately challenged by junior brother Qiao and junior brother Xiao. "I'm afraid that Li Zhengming will have complaints in his heart." Complaints? Haha, they're not some shallow and boring people. You don't have to worry about them, senior brother Ku. Lin Yi smiled faintly, unconcerned. Regarding the people under his command, Lin Yi understood them far better than anyone else present. There were only two reasons why Xiao Ran did this. One was that it was rare to meet an expert of the same level, so it was inevitable that he would be excited. This was human nature, and even Xiao Ran was no exception. As for the other reason, it was something that even Lin Yi himself was quite interested in. Currently, most of the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion had already joined Lin Yi, but there were only 3 people who would be valued by Lin Yi and could possibly take on heavy responsibilities. One was Xiao Ran, the other was Qiao Hongzai, and the last possible candidate was Li Zhengming, who had just joined Lin Yi's side. It was inevitable that these three people would compete with each other, and it could also be said that it was something that was inevitable. Now that Li Zhengming had defeated Qiao Hongcai, then in the battle between him and Xiao Ran, no matter which side won, they would be able to lock the position of the number one person under Lin Yi's side. There was no doubt about this. Others might not be able to see this, but these three people must have seen it very clearly. Lin Yi was also very curious about this. After all, these three people had extraordinary talent and potential. In the future, when they grow up, they would all be strong subordinates. Among these three people, who was stronger and who was weaker would decide who would be the most reliable right hand of Lin Yi in the future. As soon as Li Zhengming joined Lin Yi's side, the news of Qiao Hongcai and Xiao Ran's challenge spread like wildfire. Naturally, this matter became the focus of the Welcome Pavilion recently. Such a lively matter. Naturally, it could not escape Murongzhen's eyes and ears. After knowing about this, Murongzhen immediately went to find Meng Tong in a rage. What is it? Meng Tong weakly let Murongzhen into the cave. His face was frighteningly pale, and he looked miserable as if he was beyond cure. Previously, when Lin Yi left behind an injury, although he had used the grade 4 recover pill to keep him alive, because the medicinal power of the grade 4 recover pill clashed with the remaining meridian heart-shattering pill in his body, his injury had not fully healed until now. Moreover, he had to endure the inhumane heart-shattering pain every day from midnight to noon. On top of that, Meng Jueguang's death had left a huge impact on him. The fact that Meng Tong was still alive could be said to be a small miracle. How did you end up like this? Murongzhen could not help but frown at the sight. It was true that she looked down on Meng Tong in the past. However, ever since Meng Tong consumed the meridian heart-shattering pill and was reborn, she could clearly feel that this guy's ability was slightly stronger than hers. Therefore, her impression of him had changed. One could even say that she had high hopes for him. Even after Meng Tong was defeated by Lin Yi, she would not look down on him like she did in the past. Spit it out if you have anything to say. Meng Tong glared at her coldly. In the beginning, he was a little tempted by this woman. However, ever since he returned from the back mountain, that thought had faded away. Especially after he consumed the meridian heart-shattering pill, his personality had changed drastically. He would not take this woman who only knew how to sell herself seriously. Murongzhen was stunned, and her face instantly turned red. Since when was she, the beautiful Murongzhen, treated with disdain by a mere Meng Tong? However, Murongzhen suppressed her anger forcefully. Now that Meng Jueguang was not here, if she wanted to fight against Lin Yi, she had to rope in all the allies that she could. Kang Ming was one of them, and so was Meng Tong. Before this, she and Lin Yi only had different standpoints. However, after the incident at the Half Moon Lake in the back mountain, Lin Yi had become a thorn in her flesh that she had to get rid of. If she wanted to fight against Shanghai Lena, Lin Yi would be the first obstacle in her way. When a scheming woman like Murongzhen made up her mind to do something, it was absolutely terrifying. No matter how bad Meng Tong's attitude was, as long as they were on the same side, she would endure it. You know that Li Zhengming sought refuge with Lin Yi, don't you? Murongzhen said while suppressing her unhappiness. I didn't know that. Meng Tong was slightly taken aback. He had been hiding in his cave to recuperate in seclusion, so he knew very little about what was happening in the outside world. Murongzhen was the one who came to tell him about Meng Jueguang's death. I don't know what you're planning, but from what I see, it doesn't matter if the others seek refuge with Lin Yi. After all, they're useless trash. However, Li Zhengming is different. He's not to be trifled with, Murongzhen said lecherously. Not to be trifled with? Did you see that with your eyes? Meng Tong panted heavily as he sneered. He had been looking down on Li Zhengming since a long time ago, let alone now that he had been reborn. Murongzhen shook her head speechlessly and said slowly, I'll only say one thing. He was challenged by Qiao Hongcai and he won cleanly. What? Meng Tong's expression suddenly changed. Like everyone else, he had always thought that Li Zhengming was just a weakling at Heaven Stage Full Cycle, so he had never taken him seriously. However, Li Zhengming was actually able to defeat Qiao Hongcai. After fighting Qiao Hongcai 3 times, he was well aware of how strong Qiao Hongcai was. Strictly speaking, even if he took the Meridian heart-shattering pill and was reborn, it would not be easy for him to defeat Qiao Hongcai, who was in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. The fact that Li Zhengming could defeat Qiao Hongcai meant that he had successfully built his foundation and was a top-notch existence among experts of the same level. This person was supposed to be a powerful chess piece that we used to deal with Lin Yi. I thought that after Meng Jueguang died, you would at least try to win him over. I didn't expect you to ignore him and directly let him join Lin Yi, Mu Rongzhen said resentfully. Logically, after learning of Meng Jueguang's death, Meng Tong, as the number 1 person under Meng Jueguang, should have immediately stood up and tried to take over Meng Jueguang's subordinates. However, Meng Tong did not do so. Firstly, he was busy recuperating in seclusion, so it was not convenient for him to come out and meet people. Secondly, he looked down on these trash who had not even built their foundation, so he was too lazy to waste his energy. However, he did not expect that Li Zhengming, who had hidden such a powerful strength, would appear under him. Chapter 3968. If that's the case, then I've really miscalculated. Meng Tong was rather annoyed. If it was in the past, he might still be stubborn. However, his temperament had changed. Although he did not look like a normal person, he was much more tolerant than before. However, Mu Rongzhen suddenly said, actually, in my opinion, Li Zhengming's defection to Lin Yi might not be a foregone conclusion. What do you mean? Meng Tong could not help but ask in confusion. I've already said that as soon as Li Zhengming defected, he was immediately challenged by Qiao Hongcai. That was supposed to be a show of strength, but he won instead. Guess how Qiao Hongcai feels now? Mu Rongzhen speculated. Moreover, I've also heard that after Qiao Hongcai was defeated by Li Zhengming, Xiao Ran challenged him again. I don't think I need to explain what's going on, right? Are you saying that Li Zhengming has been pushed aside by Lin Yi's subordinates? Meng Tong's eyes lit up. It was not impossible. If Meng Tong was in Qiao Hongcai's and Xiao Ran's position, he might have done the same thing to strengthen his position. Otherwise, he would not have suppressed Li Zhengming in front of Meng Jueguang. That's right. This is our chance. We can try to change Li Zhengming's allegiance. Mu Rongzhen's eyes lit up. Sure, I'm fine with it. Meng Tong glanced at Mu Rongzhen and said, this should be your specialty. I don't think I have to do it myself. Apart from a few unusual creatures, Mu Rongzhen's honey trap was very effective most of the time in the Welcome Pavilion where women were absent all year round. It's not a problem for me to do it. However, since Li Zhengming has been enduring for so long, he's not a shallow person. Can you change his allegiance? It depends on your sincerity, Mu Rongzhen said. Back at the back mountain, she clearly saw how Meng Tong treated Li Zhengming. To her, Li Zhengming defected to Lin Yi because he was forced by Meng Tong. If Meng Tong did not change his attitude, it would be useless no matter how hard she tried. Meng Tong's expression froze. He then said, go ahead and seduce him. I know what to do when the time comes. Very good. Then wait for my good news, Mu Rongzhen smiled, then turned around and left while twisting her waist. As long as Meng Tong was willing to apologize to Li Zhengming, she believed that with her charm, it would be easy for her to seduce Li Zhengming. However, Mu Rongzhen did not go to Li Zhengming directly after she returned. After all, Li Zhengming had just defected to Lin Yi. Even if he was being ostracized, it was just the beginning. He had not experienced it deeply enough. It was better to let him experience it for a while. Especially when he fought with Xiao Ran, the conflict between them would definitely intensify. If she, Mu Rongzhen, were to make an appearance when Li Zhengming was suffering, then she would surely be able to accomplish twice the result with half the effort. Of course. Although the matter of instigating Li Zhengming to defect was temporarily put aside, Mu Rongzhen did not stay idle. Her top priority now was to hook Kang Mingming. No matter what, this was the meat that had truly entered her mouth, and it was definitely profitable. Soon. Thanks to Mu Rongzhen's flattery, her efforts weren't wasted. Kang Jiaoming helped her reap some benefits that were neither too big nor too small. After getting Xu Lingchong's permission, Kang Mingming took the initiative to suggest to pavilion leader Hu Yunfeng that Murongzhen should be the second senior brother in charge of Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomers. This suggestion was exactly what Hu Yunfeng wanted. Now that his senior brother had been promoted to the position of Clear Cloud Pavilion's new eldest senior brother, although the position of second senior brother didn't seem important and didn't have much actual power, it was a hard-to-come-by opportunity. In this kind of situation, it had an irreplaceable role. With Hu Yunfeng's order, Murongzhen immediately became the second senior brother in charge of Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomers. Lin Yi did not care about it. In Lin Yi's eyes, these things were not worth mentioning. His top priority now was to go to Blue Cloud Pavilion to find the King of Wornout. It had been several months since he made the agreement with the King of Wornout. Although he was really troubled by various things, Lin Yi still felt sorry for the King of Wornout. Now that the threat of Meng Jueguang had been successfully solved, and there was nothing else important for the time being, it was time to fulfill the agreement with the King of Wornout. Lin Yi needed to upgrade the level of the fine steel staff as soon as possible. Otherwise, he could not use the heavenly stage magic weapon in the Foundation establishment stage. After roughly inquiring about the internal situation of the Blue Cloud Pavilion with senior brother Ku Bai, Lin Yi immediately set off. Alone, Lin Yi soon arrived at the territory of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. Generally speaking, the territories of the three pavilions were heavily guarded, especially places like the skyscraping pavilion. Last time, Xiao Ran just went in to find someone and was almost killed. He was lucky to meet Shanghai Lena, so he was lucky enough to survive. However, although the three great pavilions were on the same level in name, the gap between them was like heaven and earth. Compared to the heavily guarded Soaring Sky Pavilion, the Clear Cloud Pavilion's guards were so loose that it was as if they had no defenses at all. From the beginning to the end, no guards came to question Lin Yi, a stranger who had appeared out of nowhere. Of course, Lin Yi's destination was only the periphery of the foot of the mountain. If he really wanted to enter the inner periphery of the core of power, it would be a different scene. Senior brother, may I ask if Wang Lampa lives here? Lin Yi had learned from senior brother Ku Bai before that this guy seemed to live in a wooden house at the foot of the mountain. However, after looking around, he did not find any wooden house, so he could only ask the people around him. Wang Lampa? Who is this guy? I've never heard of him. The man frowned and immediately turned to leave. However, after a while, he suddenly turned his head and said, I've never heard of Wang Lampa, but there is a famous poor guy here called the King of Wornout. Lin Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry. The King of Wornout was Wang Lampa. How did this guy get along? People only remembered his nickname, but had never heard of his real name. That's him. Senior brother, can you tell me where he lives? Lin Yi asked immediately. Chapter 3969. Thank you. Lin Yi nodded and went in the direction the man pointed out. After a while, Lin Yi found a ruin at the foot of the mountain. Judging from the wreckage, it should be the wooden house the man mentioned. Lin Yi couldn't help but be taken aback. If this really was the King of Trash's place, then this guy wasn't just in trouble, he was in trouble. Even his place was burned down. Just how big of a grudge was this guy? After all, it couldn't be that the Rag King was bored and burned the house to relieve his boredom, right? Fortunately, the Rag King was an expert at the peak of the early stage of the foundation building realm. Unless he was killed, the fire in the wooden house should not hurt him. However, if he could not find the Rag King, it would be difficult for Lin Yi. With his identity as Second Lin, even if he got rid of the threat of Meng Jueguang, he could not show up too blatantly. If he could not find the Rag King in a short time, he would have to return without any achievement. Just as Lin Yi was hesitating whether he should stay here or not, three figures rushed over from behind. They were still quite a distance away, but they had already used their skills to attack Lin Yi without saying a word. Lin Yi was shocked. He thought his identity had been exposed. It would not be good news for him to make a scene in such a place. However, this was Blue Cloud Pavilion's territory after all. If someone was killed, the situation would be out of control and there would be endless trouble. Without thinking too much, Lin Yi dodged the attack with the butterfly microsteps and said coldly, "Who are you? What do you want?" "Chimph, what else? Of course, we are here to get even with you." How dare you steal from us? You don't even know how to write the word death. Last time, we only burned your wooden house. You got off lightly. Today, I will teach you a lesson. The leader sneered. However, when he saw Lin Yi's face clearly, he suddenly stopped talking. You are not the Rag King? Lin Yi glanced at him. What do you think? The three of them could not help but look at each other. However, after realizing that they had mistaken him for someone else, they did not stop. Instead, they argued, even if he's not the Trash King, he must be the Trash King's accomplice. We're doing the will of heaven a favor by taking care of him. On behalf of the will of heaven? What an infuriating fellow. Lin Yi frowned. Then, the aura around his body suddenly surged, and the fiery fist intent enveloped all directions, as if the god of fire had appeared. As a powerhouse, there was no need for him to be overly patient with such ignorant fools. If he felt that they were too noisy, he could just knock them down with a single move. The three of them were only at the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. In Lin Yi's eyes, they could be said to be vulnerable. In just one move, the three of them had all fallen under Lin Yi's understated 24 forms of frenzy fist. Each of them was charred black and battered. If it was not for Lin Yi's deliberate mercy, the three of them would have been burned to ashes. Not even a corpse would be left. Blue Cloud Pavilion is really weak. It's called a waste shelter. Lin Yi shook his head speechlessly. The three of them were the inner disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Looking at their arrogant looks, he thought that they would have some strength. He did not expect them to be so vulnerable. It really made him speechless. After a long while, the three of them who were lucky enough to keep their lives finally recovered from the shock. After looking at Lin Yi from afar, they turned around and ran away while screaming as if they had seen a ghost. If the three of them had to describe their feelings at the moment, it could only be described as wanting to cry but having no tears. They were obviously here to settle accounts with the Trash King who did not even know how to fight. In the end, they inexplicably kicked an iron plate. How could they reason with this thing? Looking at this ruthless person, he was probably from Soaring Sky Pavilion, right? Thinking of this, the three of them thought that they were lucky not to be crippled. Lin Yi smiled disdainfully and let the three of them run away in embarrassment. He did not have the intention to kill them. Otherwise, if he had the intention, these three ignorant guys would have long been dead. They have already run away. Can you come out now? Lin Yi suddenly said to a rock in the ruins. This guy hid so well that even he did not notice him at first. However, when he was affected by the fist intent of the frenzy fist just now, there was clearly movement behind him. After a long while, there was still no movement behind the rock. Not even a weak breath could be felt. Logically, with Lin Yi's keen perception, this distance could not escape his eyes and ears at all. It was impossible that he could not even detect the breath. If it were others, they might think that it was an illusion just now, but Lin Yi was quite sure. He smiled slightly and said, "If you don't come out, then don't blame me for being rude and giving you another punch." After that, Lin Yi condensed the fiery fist intent again. There was finally movement behind the rock. Wait, I'm coming out." A disheveled figure immediately jumped out of the ruins. His clothes had been burned to tatters, and his face was scorched black. At first glance, he looked like an African refugee. Before Lin Yi said anything, the man hurriedly nodded and bowed and said, "Brother, I really didn't mean to steal your spiritual beast materials. You have already thrown them away. At most, I picked them up and reused them. How can it be considered as stealing?" Lin Yi was stunned, and then he could not help but laugh. He might not be able to recognize him just by looking at his strange appearance, but from his voice, he obviously knew that this person was the King of Rags he was looking for. "King of Rags, why don't you think about it carefully and see if you really stole my spiritual beast materials?" Lin Yi simply did not point it out. He raised his eyebrows and joked with him. This really can't be considered as stealing. You have eyes but failed to see and threw away good things as trash. In the end, when I picked them up, you insist that I stole them and want me to pay for spiritual jades. Don't you think I'm wronged?" The King of Rags did not even dare to look at Lin Yi in the eye. He just kept saying with a crying face, "Don't you feel wronged? Why don't you tell me what kind of trash you've been picking up? Maybe you've made a mistake too? Lin Yi said playfully. Chapter 3970. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. Black toad tail, fox barebone, wolf spider fur. It sounds like you've picked up quite a few things. I wonder if you still remember the front claws and whip tail of the nine-tailed cloud leopard. Nine-tailed cloud leopard? This guy's body is full of treasures. Who would throw away his things like trash? Is there something wrong with his head? Wait, did you say nine-tailed cloud leopard? The king of junk mumbled subconsciously. When he took a closer look at Lin Yi, he was stunned as if he had been struck by lightning. He was so excited that he stuttered. You. Who are you? The second brother Lin? Hehe, you finally recognize me. I thought you're ready to turn your back on me after such a long time. Lin Yi smiled faintly. You flatter me. I've been waiting for you for the past few months. How could I turn my back on you? The king of junk was overjoyed. For a person like him who valued forging as his life, it was rare for Lin Yi to promise him that he could handle a high-end material like the nine-tailed cloud leopard. This was something that he had always dreamed of. He was excited every day when he thought about it. For the past few months, the king of junk had been making various preparations for this. The reason why he had gone out to collect so many materials from spiritual beasts was also because of this consideration. Even the king of junk had once suspected that Lin Yi had forgotten about it. After all, he called himself a forger, but he'd never succeeded in crafting any decent weapons. He didn't think that he had any persuasiveness, or he wouldn't have gotten the reputation of being the king of junk. It was only natural that he'd be forgotten by people. If it wasn't for Lin Yi mentioning the nine-tailed cloud leopard, the king of junk would never have linked this person's identity to Lin Yi. He would have thought that this person was here to make trouble for him, just like the other three people. Lin Yi couldn't help but lament at the sight of the king of junk's ecstatic expression. This king of junk really had it tough. Putting everything else aside, he was still obsessed with the path of smithing despite being in such a sorry state. At the very least, it proved that his passion for forging was unparalleled. Just based on this point alone, Lin Yi felt that he had found the right person. Regardless of whether it was dead or alive, as long as one put their heart into it, everything in the world would have spirituality. For a person like the tattered king who could fully devote his attention to the art of forging, no matter how low the level of the item he forged was, it would still be extraordinary. Brother Wang, it looks like you've been in a lot of trouble recently. Lin Yi pointed at the surrounding ruins and asked with a smile. The king of junk's expression froze. He scratched the back of his head awkwardly and said with an embarrassed smile, I've embarrassed myself in front of you, Brother Lin. I merely picked up something from the pile of junk they threw away. I didn't expect to get myself into so much trouble. It was clearly something that they threw away, but I picked it up and they insisted that I stole it. Brother Lin, don't you think they're being too unreasonable? Hehe, that's how people are. It's fine if you're just throwing away some junk that no one wants. However, once they find out that they've made a mistake and thrown away the wrong item, it's like cutting off a piece of flesh from their body. Of course, they won't let it go. Lin Yi shook his head and suddenly asked, how did they know that they made a mistake? Brother Wang, you didn't pick it up in front of them, did you? The king of junk scratched his head awkwardly again and said with an embarrassed smile, come to think of it, it's also because of me. Brother Lin, you can also see that people like me can't stand people wasting good things. When I saw them throwing away good things like they were trash, I couldn't help but mutter a few words about it. I don't know how it spread to their ears. That's why they came looking for me. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry after hearing this. The king of junk's temperament was indeed like this. When he first traded with Chen Heihu, this guy couldn't help but say a few words to change his mind at the last minute and cut off the nine-tailed cloud leopard's front claws and whip tail. In other words, the reason was actually because of the king of junk himself. If those people knew that the junk they threw away was good stuff and was picked up by someone else, it would be strange if they could bear it. If those people were a little narrow-minded, it was inevitable that they would come looking for trouble. Moreover, the king of junk was basically a coward that could be trampled on by anyone. It could be seen that the king of junk's EQ was really not high. Looking at the situation, they should have been looking for you more than once. Brother Wang, Why don't you leave this troublesome place as soon as possible? Instead, you stay here in such a mess. Lin Yi was puzzled. The wooden house here should have been burned a few days ago. The King of Junk's burnt and miserable appearance was not caused by Lin Yi's frenzied fire fist just now. After all, the frenzied fire fist had locked onto the three people just now. The King of Junk was at most slightly affected by the fist intent. If it was not unexpected, the King of Junk's current appearance was left when the wooden house was burned. If it were someone else, they would definitely find a chance to leave in these few days. Even if they were worried and came back to take a look, they would at least clean themselves up. They would not look like this. Hee, I was afraid that Brother Lin wouldn't be able to find them when you arrived, so I've been waiting here. The tattered king said straightforwardly and honestly. Lin Yi could not help being speechless for a while. At the same time, he was secretly moved. It was just because of an agreement with a stranger that he stayed here regardless of the danger. It was really rare to see such an honest person like the King of Junk these days. Brother Wang, you have been staying here all this time? Then why didn't they find you when they burned the house last time? Lin Yi could not help but ask curiously. Although the King of Junk's strength was really weak, he could feel that he seemed to be good at hiding himself. Yes, they couldn't find me last time, so they burned my house to vent their anger. In fact, I have been hiding here from beginning to end. I just used the calm heart-holding method, so they couldn't find me. The King of Junk smiled proudly. Calm heart-holding method? Lin Yi was slightly stunned. Chapter 3971. I see. The art of forging is indeed unfathomable and extraordinary. Lin Yi exclaimed. Speaking of which, when he was in the secular world, he had already tried to forge weapons. That was how he got his fine steel staff. At that time, he thought that it wouldn't be too difficult to forge weapons. It was just that everyone had their own specialties, and he was still at the stage of fumbling around. But now, Lin Yi could feel the profoundness and depth of this line of work from the King of Garbage's words. This was a line of work that wasn't any weaker than elixir refinement, and underestimating it was a sign of ignorance on the part of an outsider. The three people just now were experts at the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Normally, it was impossible for someone like the Tattered King to fool them and burn down their house, unless it was an expert like Lin Yi. However, the Tattered King did it. It showed that the exclusive meditation and breath-holding method of a blacksmith was indeed extraordinary. Of course, I'm not boasting. Even if you study the art of forging for a lifetime, you will at most have a superficial understanding of it. It's impossible to master it completely. The Tattered King looked fascinated. After a pause, he suddenly rubbed his hands and said eagerly, Brother Lin, time is precious. Can we start as soon as possible? Lin Yi was startled. Looking at the Tattered King's impatience, he could not help but laugh. He pointed at the ruins in front of him and said, I'm fine with it. But do we do it here? The Tattered King immediately shook his head and said, Of course not. Forging weapons is the same as alchemy. It has high requirements for the environment. Alchemy is better, at least there's an alchemy furnace. However, there's no such thing as a furnace for forging weapons. We can only find a suitable place by ourselves. Then where can we find such a place? Lin Yi was puzzled. In front of the Tattered King, he was a complete outsider. Since he had asked the Tattered King for help, he could only let the Tattered King make the decision. He only needed to cooperate fully. The Tattered King smiled mysteriously and said, I know a good place. Brother Lin, just follow me. Lin Yi didn't mind. He asked the Tattered King to lead the way. They walked for an hour before they finally arrived at their destination. Looking at the hole in front of him that was as tall as a person and hidden by the weeds, Lin Yi was speechless. If I remember correctly, this place should be at the edge of the Spirit Jade Mine, right? That's right, it's right next to the Spirit Jade Mine. Furthermore, it's not too far from the best mines in the Spirit Jade Mine. You might even be able to find some spiritual jades in the cave. The King of Rags and Rags led the way into the cave and answered without looking back. It's not far from the number 1 and number 2 mines. Lin Yi was surprised again. In that case, if one had the intention to dig, it was indeed possible to find spiritual jades. However, Since the king of junk knew of such a treasured land, how did he end up in such a state? After all, this place wasn't supervised like the Lingyu Hall mining area. As long as he dug up spiritual jades here, no matter how many there were, it would belong to him. His life should be quite comfortable. He shouldn't be so poor that he couldn't even afford some spiritual beast materials and had to shamelessly pick up the garbage thrown away by others, right? Yes, but I'm just joking. Brother Lin, don't take it seriously. Don't touch the cave wall casually, let alone dig out the spiritual jades inside. If you accidentally touch the protective array inside, both of us will die. The King of Rags and Rags said as he took out a piece of fluorite that he had prepared long ago. He led the way into the depths of the cave with familiarity. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat and he asked curiously, if I'm not wrong. Since this place is so close to the number 1 and number 2 mines, it should be within the range of the protective array. Maybe we've already stepped on the protective array, but we don't know why we didn't touch it. How could there be such a cave out of nowhere? The King of Rags and Rags shook his head and said, I don't know either. Maybe it has something to do with my master. My master was the one who brought me here for the first time. After that, he left without saying goodbye, so no one else has been to this cave except me. Sun Sikong? Lin Yi was slightly stunned. When they first met in the marketplace, the King of Rags once said that he had learned from a master of forging called Sun Sikong for a few days. That must be the master he mentioned. Yes, my master is very resourceful. It's not impossible for him to secretly make a cave under the protective array without the 3 pavilions knowing. The King of Rags and Rags' face was full of admiration. I really want to meet such an expert if I have the chance. Lin Yi was also fascinated. This cave looked simple, but for it to be able to appear in such a tight defensive formation and not be discovered by anyone, the ability it displayed was not something that could be described in a few words. The person who created this cave was at least worthy of the word remarkable. It depends on fate. An expert like my master is always elusive. I'm afraid the chance of meeting him again in this life is very slim. The King of Rags and Rags sighed. As they talked, they had already arrived at the depths of the cave. The front was much more spacious than the passage. It was about 30 to 40 square meters, and there were many strange props placed in it. Seeing that Lin Yi was curiously looking at these props, the King of Rags smiled and said, these are some auxiliary molds that may be used in the process of forging. However, whether they are useful or not depends on what kind of weapon you want to forge. Speaking of this, Brother Lin, do you have any requests? Yes, I came to you this time because I want you to help me upgrade a weapon. As Lin Yi said, he put down the package that he had been carrying on his back for a long time, and took out an ordinary-looking fire stick from it. It was his fine steel staff. After seeing the fine steel staff, the King of Rags' eyes suddenly lit up. He took it and looked at it carefully from top to bottom, and touched it with his hand. Then, he commented while smacking his lips, this thing is made of good materials. I can see that the casting process is quite thoughtful. However, it's a bit of a waste that the properties of the materials are not fully explored. Lin Yi couldn't help but secretly wipe his cold sweat, and said with a wry smile, I made this by myself, Brother King. Chapter 3972. He was counting on Lin Yi to give him good materials, so that he could satisfy his craving for forging. If he offended Lin Yi, or if he pissed off Lin Yi, he'd be crying. Not at all, compared to you, Brother Wang, I'm just an amateur. I'd like to use this chance to learn the art of forging from you, Brother Wang. Is that okay? Lin Yi smiled. Lin Yi, naturally, was a blacksmith, but he was just a dabbler. What made Lin Yi curious was, who was this Sun Sikong? Han Jingjing had said that her master was called Sun Sikong, as well could these 2 Sun Sikongs be the same person? Then how did he come to Sky-class Island? Could he be a legendary figure like Zhong Liju? At the thought, Lin Yi's heart was filled with even more respect. The tattered king hurriedly said in excitement, Brother Lin, you're too kind. It's my dream to have a like-minded person to explore the Tao of smithing with me. Don't worry, Brother Lin, I'll tell you everything I know. Then I'll thank you in advance, Brother Wang. Lin Yi nodded in thanks before taking out the high-level spirit beast materials that the Trash King had been longing for. It was the front claws and tail of the Cloud-9 tail leopard. At the sight of these items, the tattered king's eyes immediately lit up. Like a hungry wolf seeing a sheep, his entire temperament changed instantly. Faintly, Lin Yi could feel the aura of a master that couldn't be underestimated. One could see that even if he wasn't strong enough, when a person was fully focused on something, his potential could be unearthed. These are all good stuff. The tattered king held these things in his arms like they were treasures. He carefully reached out and gently stroked them, afraid that he would dirty them. Looking at his posture, it seemed like he wanted to sleep with these things. After a moment of happiness, Junk King realized that there was a Lin Yi in front of him. He took out a few things and introduced them to Lin Yi. They were the black toad tail, fox barebone, and wolf spider fur. Brother Lin, these things may not look like much, and they're not the most valuable parts of the spiritual beasts, but these are the fruits of my hard work over the past few months. Together with your cloud leopard, they're definitely good stuff. They're very compatible with each other, and their effects aren't inferior to any other spiritual beast materials. Junk King showed Lin Yi. Brother Wang, it's been hard on you these past few months. Lin Yi expressed his gratitude. Not at all. It's not hard at all. To me, it's a good job, and I can't wait to be happy. Junk King chuckled. After a pause, Junk King looked at Lin Yi's fine steel staff and scratched his head. He said with fervor and assurance, Brother Lin, you didn't tell me about this before, so I didn't think about the casting plan. But don't worry, I've roughly observed it just now, and your staff doesn't conflict with the materials of the cloud leopard, so it shouldn't be a problem to upgrade it. Moreover, the materials involved aren't many, so I believe it won't take long to gather all the materials. Even though Lin Yi was an outsider, he could see that Junk King was indeed a forging madman, and he definitely had real skills. If he was given the right opportunity, it might be possible for him to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. This Junk King, who was belittled by everyone, was actually a buried gem. Once he showed his brilliance, he would definitely amaze the world. Seeing that Junk King couldn't wait to start thinking about the upgrading plan, Lin Yi hurriedly said, Brother Wang, please wait. I have other materials with me. Why don't you take a look first? Oh. Quick, take them out. Junk King's eyes lit up, and he couldn't wait to urge Lin Yi. Lin Yi smiled, and then slowly took out a small porcelain bottle from the cloth bundle, and handed it to Junk King. The King of Junk took it, opened the bottle cap, and was stunned the moment he took a look. He put his nose close to the bottle and sniffed it in disbelief. He even dipped his finger into the bottle and tasted it. After a while, he became fanatical, and his eyes glowed with green light like a hungry wolf. Brother Lin, this is the legendary ancient Pure Land? Junk King stammered. That's right, Brother Wang, you have a good eye. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to recognize this thing. Lin Yi praised with a smile. The ancient Pure Land was a rare and unorthodox treasure. Apart from the ghostly old monster who had lived for an unknown period of time, ordinary people would not be able to recognize it. They might not even have heard of it. Even Yu Zhe, who had immersed himself in the ancient classics, might not be able to recognize it. It could be seen that the King of Junk was indeed skilled in forging weapons. Hearing that, Junk King almost fainted, and it took him a while to regain his senses. He looked at Lin Yi with tears in his eyes, and almost knelt down. Brother Lin, you're really my second parent. I have no more regrets in my life to be able to see such a legendary material. Don't worry, I haven't taken out anything yet. Seeing Junk King's expression as if he had gotten what he wanted, Lin Yi could not help but laugh. He took out another item from the bag and handed it to Junk King. This is a 1,000-year tree crystal. You even have such a thing. May I be so bold as to ask, who exactly are you, Brother Lin? Junk King's eyes widened, and saliva flowed from the corner of his mouth uncontrollably. He looked like he had lost his soul. I'm no saint, but I still have something to show you. With that, Lin Yi pulled out another piece of wood as if he was performing a magic trick, handing it to the Garbage King. Junk King took the piece of wood and looked at it carefully for a while. Then, without saying anything, he fell to the ground and fainted. Lin Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry at this scene. Although the 1,000-year tree crystal was indeed rare, and it was shocking to see it together with the ancient Pure Land and the thousand-year tree crystal. It was a little too much for Junk King to be so shocked that he fainted on the spot. Fortunately, he had encountered someone like the Tattered King who knew what was good for him. Otherwise, if it was an ordinary person, they wouldn't even be able to recognize the 10,000-year tree crystal and the ancient Pure Land, let alone be provoked. After a long time, Junk King finally woke up. He almost fainted again when he saw the priceless items in front of him. Lin Yi quickly grabbed him and joked, "Brother King, you're a blacksmith after all. I've only let you look at the materials, but you've fainted again and again. How can I ask you for help?" Junk King finally calmed himself down. He scratched his head awkwardly and smiled foolishly. His eyes could not move away from the thousand-year tree crystal. Chapter 3973. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Lin Yi asked again, "Brother King, apart from the nine-tailed cloud leopard and the materials you've brought, the 10,000-year tree crystal, the thousand-year tree crystal, and the ancient Pure Land should be more than enough to upgrade my fine steel magic staff, right?" Unexpectedly, the Junk King suddenly said with a serious expression, "Not enough, of course these things are far from enough." "What?" Lin Yi paused, wondering if this guy's eyes had really been opened to treasures and started thinking about something he shouldn't have, right? There were so many rare items in this world, and he was using them to level up a steel staff. How could it not be enough? Could it be that this fellow wanted to take the opportunity to extort money? No matter how much of an amateur Lin Yi was, he had at least experimented with the art of forging, and had some understanding of it. In his estimation, if he wanted to upgrade his fine steel magic staff, ordinary materials and a thousand-year tree crystal should be enough. Now that he had the 10,000-year tree crystal and the ancient Pure Land, it was definitely more than enough. "Brother Lin, I don't mind telling you the truth. Your fine steel magic staff is a good item in the heaven rank, but unfortunately, its quality isn't that high. If you use these top-notch materials to upgrade it, it would be more than enough, and you could guarantee a 100% success rate. It's just that you would be wasting these rare materials," the Junk King said with a pained expression. Lin Yi nodded in realization. It was just as the King of Junk had said. In terms of value, this staff of his wasn't even worth as much as something like the 10,000-year tree crystal. It was like replacing a car that cost tens of thousands of dollars with top-grade accessories that cost tens of millions. It was a waste, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it a waste. Then what should we do? It's not good to abandon the fine steel magic staff, right? Lin Yi couldn't help feeling awkward. It would be a waste to use these top-notch materials to upgrade the fine steel staff. However, the fine steel staff was not an ordinary item, and he had poured a lot of effort into it. It would be a huge waste to discard it. He was in a dilemma. The Junk King frowned and pondered for a moment. Then, his eyes beaming with excitement, he said, "If it is simply used to upgrade the staff, it will certainly be an inhumane waste. But what if it evolves in a different way? Wouldn't it be the best of both worlds?" "Evolve?" Lin Yi was stunned. "What's the difference between that and leveling up?" "Of course there's a difference," the King of Junk immediately exclaimed. "Upgrading weapons is very common. It doesn't require much skill. Basically, any blacksmith can do it. Is it common to upgrade weapons?" Lin Yi was even more puzzled. "But why did I hear that ordinary weapons can't be upgraded, and only materials like the thousand-year tree crystal have a chance to be upgraded?" The King of Junk smiled and explained patiently, "Brother Lin, there's something you don't know. You can say that you're right, but you can also say that you're wrong. You're just like other laymen. You might not know this, but the saying that ordinary weapons can't be upgraded came from the mouth of the blacksmiths. Think about it, if they make it sound too easy, how are they going to reap huge benefits from it? You blacksmiths are really cunning." Lin Yi quickly figured out the cause and effect. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Let's not talk about whether ordinary weapons could be upgraded. If this concept became common knowledge, it would definitely be of great benefit to the blacksmiths. After all, the profession of blacksmithing was similar to alchemy. There were absolute professional barriers, and laymen had no other choice but to seek help from blacksmiths. In this way, After the difficulty was infinitely exaggerated, they could naturally reap huge benefits when upgrading weapons for others. Even if some people didn't want to upgrade their weapons because of this, they would still need new weapons. In the end, they would still have to seek help from blacksmiths, and it would immediately be a good business. Therefore, as long as this theory was spread out and became the mindset of the people, no one would be able to escape from being ruthlessly slaughtered. It would be a pity if the blacksmith who came up with this idea didn't open a trade union. Lin Yi thought about it and asked again. But, even if someone did spread this rumor, it's impossible for all the blacksmiths to be of one mind, right? Lies will be exposed one day. Did no one find out about it after all these years? If it was a lie that was fabricated out of thin air, it would indeed be easily seen through by others. However, the problem is that this statement isn't a complete lie, but a half-truth and half-falsehood. To an outsider who has been confused by the concept, it would be very difficult to distinguish between the two. Especially when this idea is deeply rooted, even if some blacksmiths stand out to explain it to them, they might not be able to accept it. Moreover, this saying is beneficial to blacksmiths. Who would be foolish enough to stand out and destroy their own jobs, and even become the target of their peers? King of Junk shook his head and said. Lin Yi was instantly interested, and asked, "What exactly is the half-truth? Brother Wang, can you tell me in detail?" Of course, as long as Brother Lin is willing to listen. King of Junk immediately gestured for Lin Yi to take a seat, and explained with assurance, in the eyes of laymen, weapon upgrading is just a general concept, but in the eyes of us blacksmiths, weapon upgrading has two completely different concepts. One is ordinary weapon upgrading, and the other is extremely difficult weapon evolution. What's the difference between the two? Lin Yi asked. Hehe, there's a huge difference between the two. Ordinary weapon upgrading is actually no different from ordinary people repairing a hoe or an iron pot. As long as they pay attention to the compatibility of the materials, they can directly embed the upgrading materials into the weapon. There's no technical content, and of course, there won't be any great creation. In the end, weapons are weapons, and upgrading materials are upgrading materials. It's just that they're forcefully needed together by external forces. King of Junk twitched his mouth. Chapter 3974. What about the weapon evolution you just mentioned? Lin Yi continued to ask. Weapon evolution is completely different. Not only is the process extremely complicated, but it's also extremely difficult. The requirements for materials are also extremely high. After a high-intensity smelting reaction, the weapon and the material will be completely integrated. Basically, it's like a rebirth. The final weapon will be completely different from the original in both shape and ability, and its power will be at least 10 times, 100 times, or even 1,000 times greater than the original. King of Junk said with burning eyes. I see. In that case, the correct explanation should be that ordinary weapons can't evolve. It's not the rumor that they can't be upgraded. The outside world has been confused by this general concept. Lin Yi nodded and said. That's right. Unless you find a rare treasure like the 1,000-year tree crystal, ordinary weapons can't evolve at all. Because without the protection of the characteristics of the 1,000-year tree crystal, it's difficult for them to withstand the high-intensity smelting reaction. Maybe they'll turn into ashes halfway. There are countless examples of such failures. King of Junk sighed. The 1,000-year tree crystal can be used to evolve weapons. So that's its use. I've learned a lot. Lin Yi cupped his hands at King of Junk. The Garbage King, on the other hand, looked at Lin Yi with fire in his eyes. Brother Lin, I'll be honest with you. My biggest wish in this life is to forge a weapon that's unrivaled in the world, but without you, I wouldn't be able to see such a rare treasure in this life. I wouldn't even have the chance to forge a weapon with it. You're my savior, my savior. Seeing that King of Junk knelt down to him without saying anything, Lin Yi hurriedly pulled him back and said emotionally, Brother Wang, what are you doing? You promised to forge weapons for me unconditionally. I'm grateful to you. Why are you kneeling down to me? What the hell is this? If you do this again, I won't dare to ask you for help. No, no, no. You have to ask me for help. You have to ask me for help. I'm the only one who can use such supreme materials in the North Island. No one else can do it. King of Junk hurriedly got up and said. This guy's tone was still as big as ever. Lin Yi laughed in his heart. But after this period of contact, he didn't doubt the King of Junk's ability anymore. It could only be said that all experts had their own pride. At least in the path of forging, the King of Junk's pride wasn't groundless. As for the rumor that he didn't succeed in forging weapons, from Lin Yi's point of view, it was either because he disdained ordinary weapons, or because he really lacked the materials. Moreover, no one believed him at all. Then, what should we do to make perfect use of these materials and not waste them? Brother Wang, didn't you just say that these materials are far from enough? Lin Yi returned to the main topic. King of Junk didn't answer him immediately. Instead, he turned around and took out a piece of white paper from the corner of the cave. After writing a series of things on it, he handed it to Lin Yi and said, I've thought about it carefully just now. Brother Lin, it's rare for you to get such top materials as the ancient Pure Land and the 10,000-year tree crystal. Instead of dealing with them carelessly, it's better to make a big one. What do you think, Brother Lin? Lin Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. King of Junk's idea was exactly what he wanted. He immediately asked, I think so too. But how to make a big one? I've listed a total of 7 materials on this piece of paper. Only after gathering these 7 materials and cooperating with each other can the effect of the ancient Pure Land and the 10,000-year tree crystal be fully exerted. At that time, we can melt the fine steel staff in the furnace, and it will definitely be reborn and become a generation of magic weapon. King of Junk vowed solemnly. Upon hearing this, Lin Yi roughly glanced at the 7 casting materials listed on the white paper. They were all things that he had never seen or heard of before. Among them, the only one that he had a slight impression of was called the mysterious water droplet. I've seen this mysterious water droplet in the Hong Chamber of Commerce before. It's priced at 600 or 700 spiritual jade. I've never seen or heard of any of the others. Lin Yi pondered and said. King of Junk nodded and said, although these 7 materials are only used as auxiliary materials, they can be used with the ancient Pure Land and the 10,000-year tree crystal. Even the auxiliary materials are not cheap. The mysterious water droplet is one of the easiest to buy. As for the other 6, it's not usually available. Even a top chamber of commerce like the Hong Chamber of Commerce may not have such a stock. Then where can we find them? Lin Yi could not help but be stunned. If he could not even buy them in the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he might not be able to find all of them in his lifetime. It's obviously unrealistic to find these things by ourselves. We can only pin our hopes on the auction. It just so happens that as far as I know, next month will be the semi-annual North Island auction. Except for the legendary items like the 10,000-year tree crystal, you should have a chance to see most of the treasures. Brother Lin, why don't you give it a try? But how to get the qualification to enter the auction is a big problem. King of Junk scratched his head in distress. Is it difficult to get the qualification to enter the auction? Will the spiritual jade card work? Lin Yi showed the spiritual jade card in his hand. This was the symbol of his status. Since he could freely enter and exit the inner street, he should be able to enter the auction too, right? Brother Lin, you're really not an ordinary person. You even have this kind of thing. Looking at the spiritual jade card, King of Junk could not help swallowing his saliva. A poor cultivator like him, who lived at the bottom of society, could never get a spiritual jade card in his lifetime. However, King of Junk immediately shook his head and said, I don't know the specific situation, but the auction isn't just held by the Chamber of Commerce in the inner street. It's an alliance of all the top forces in the North Island. It's said that even some big shots in the Middle Island are involved. The people who enter and exit are all extraordinary, so a spiritual jade card may not work. I can't help you with this kind of thing. You can only rely on yourself, Brother Lin. I see. Then I'll find someone to inquire about it later. Lin Yi nodded. It was really difficult to count on King of Junk for this kind of thing. It was good enough that he could provide information. He still had to rely on Lin Yi. Well, there are many good things at the auction, but the competition is fierce. If you want to buy all 7 kinds of materials, you'll probably have to spend thousands of spiritual jade, or even tens of thousands if you're unlucky. Brother Lin, You have to be mentally prepared. However, since you have a 10,000-year-old tree crystal, you don't need this 1,000-year-old tree crystal. You can sell it at the auction for a lot of spiritual jade, King of Junk suggested. I know. By the way, there's one more thing I want you to see if it's a casting material, Lin Yi suddenly said. Chapter 3975. Shit, Brother Lin, don't tell me you got some rare ancient treasure again. My heart can't stand such a big shock. King of Junk said in surprise, but he couldn't help poking his head over and picking up a bit of blood-red gravel to observe it carefully. After a while, King of Junk shook his head helplessly. I don't know this thing. It shouldn't be used for forging, otherwise I have no reason not to recognize it. But even so, I can see that it's definitely a good thing. Brother Lin, you can take it to the auction and let someone appraise it. Then you should know. Lin Yi wasn't too surprised. It was normal that the Garbage King couldn't recognize something that even this damned thing couldn't recognize. He'd thought that it was some kind of crafting material, but it seemed like he was wrong. After that, the two talked about weaponsmithing for a bit. The King of Garbage's extraordinary knowledge in this area was quite an eye-opener. According to King of Junk himself, this was just the result of Sun Sikong's casual guidance for a few days. Lin Yi couldn't help but be secretly shocked. The cultivation world was really full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Brother Lin, I'll leave the 7 materials to you. I can't help much in this aspect, but I can take this time to do some preparation work. After all, forging a magic weapon is a big event. There can't be any mistakes. King of Junk solemnly said to Lin Yi. Then I'll leave Brother Wang to trouble you. I'll leave first. Brother Wang, wait for my news. Lin Yi immediately stood up and said goodbye. It was not too late when he left the cave. Lin Yi immediately left for the marketplace. Naturally, his purpose was to go to the Hong Chamber of Commerce to ask Hong Zhong about the auction. However, Lin Yi didn't go to the Hong Chamber of Commerce directly. Instead, he went to find Chen Heihu. It had been some time since he came here last time. He wanted to see if there was any news about the heart-devouring exquisite grass. The answer he got from Chen Heihu disappointed Lin Yi a little. Chen Heihu had spread the news of buying the heart-devouring exquisite grass to all his contacts, but there was still no news so far. It could be seen that the heart-devouring exquisite grass was indeed rare. It was already very lucky that he could find it in the periphery of the back mountain and among the spiritual medicine seeds distributed by Lingyu Hall. Fortunately, the east wasn't bright, and the west was bright. There was no news from Chen Heihu, after all. Lin Yi had asked Hong Zhong for help back then. As soon as Lin Yi stepped into the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Hong Zhong, who was patrolling downstairs, came up and led him to a private room on the 2nd floor. And said, Hero Lin, you asked me to help you buy the heart-devouring exquisite grass last time. Now, I have got 2. I'll ask someone to pack it for you. Lin Yi was overjoyed when he heard that. He said gratefully, Thank you so much, Manager Hong. What's the price? Haha, then 100 spiritual jades for one. What do you think, Hero Lin? Hong Zhong smiled and said while stroking his beard. Lin Yi's heart moved. He knew that Hong Zhong was doing him a favor again. If it was an ordinary spiritual medicine, it could be bought with a few spiritual jades. 100 spiritual jades was considered a heaven-grade spiritual jades. However, the rarer something was, the greater its value. With the rarity of the heart-devouring exquisite grass, 100 spiritual jades for one was practically half selling and half giving away. He probably did not buy it at such a low price. Lin Yi was not in a hurry to answer. He passed the white paper that King of Rags wrote to him to Hong Zhong and said, Manager Hong, other than the matter of the heart-devouring exquisite grass, the other reason I came here is to buy the items on this list. I wonder if the Chamber of Commerce has them in stock. Oh. Hero Lin, please wait for a moment. I'll get someone to check. Hong Zhong gestured for Lin Yi to drink his tea and instructed the manservant at the door. After a while, the manservant reported, out of the 7 materials, our Chamber of Commerce has only the mysterious droplet in stock at the moment. The price is 649 spiritual jades. We don't have the other 6. Sure enough. Lin Yi had already expected this, so he didn't feel regretful. He immediately said, Then, Pack up this mysterious water drop and the 2 heart-devouring exquisite grass for me. It's a total of 1,000 spirit jades. Is that all right, shopkeeper Hong? Hong Zhong immediately smiled and waved his hand. Hero Lin, you must be joking. I know you mean well. However, business is business. Since I said 1 heart-devouring exquisite grass is 100 spiritual jades, I won't charge you half a piece more. Otherwise, where is the integrity of a businessman? If people find out, who would dare to do business with the Hong Chamber of Commerce in the future? Lin Yi knew he had said something wrong, so he could only say, all right then. I'll use the extra spiritual jades to buy spiritual medicine. Is that okay? Lin Yi never liked to owe people favors. Since Hong Zhong was not willing to charge more spiritual jades, he might as well go back and refine some medicinal pills. Next time, he would bring a few top-grade foundation establishment pills for him. At that time, Hong Zhong would definitely be more than happy and would not refuse him like this. Hong Zhong seemed to have seen through Lin Yi's plan. He smiled knowingly and said, then I'll thank Hero Lin for your care. If Hero Lin is not in a hurry, I can also get someone to keep an eye on the remaining 6 materials for you. Just like the heart-devouring exquisite grass, after a period of time, you might get something. Thank you, Manager Hong. However, I heard that there will be an auction on the North Island next month. Lin Yi asked tentatively. Hong Zhong immediately understood and nodded. Yes, the level of this auction is not low. Hero Lin, you should be able to find the things you want there. Are you interested in going to have a look? Yes, I'm just worried about how to get the qualification to enter. I wonder if Manager Hong can help me. Lin Yi said immediately. Hong Zhong could not help but smile and said, Hero Lin, you don't have to worry. Although the qualification to enter the North Island auction is very rare, and ordinary people can't enter unless they are a powerful force, but fortunately, our Hong Chamber of Commerce is also one of the sponsors of the auction, so we naturally have the qualification to bring extra people to enter. If it's convenient for Hero Lin, how about coming with me? Lin Yi could not help but be overjoyed. Before coming here, he thought he would have to spend a lot of effort to get the qualification, but he did not expect that Hong Zhong would easily solve it for him with a simple sentence. Things like connections were really priceless at critical times. Thank you, Manager Hong. Lin Yi said gratefully. Chapter 3976. It had to be said that Hong Zhong's position as the manager of the branch of the Hong Chamber of Commerce was not for nothing. He had done a great favor for others, but he never claimed credit for it. Instead, he spoke of it so casually that it made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. As long as one wasn't an ungrateful person, they would definitely remember such a favor. Moreover, they would remember it willingly and without the slightest bit of discomfort. Over time, they would naturally form a huge and reliable network. The more friends, the more options. This was definitely a golden saying in the cultivation world, and it was even more so for a businessman like Hong Zhong who relied on his connections to make a living. It could only be said that people like Hong Zhong, no matter what they did, would definitely be able to achieve great things in the end. Strength was only one aspect, but his character and wisdom in dealing with people were also indispensable. Many times, it was even more useful than great strength. Lin Yi could not help but deeply feel that being on good terms with a person like Hong Zhong would definitely be of great benefit to his future development. I am already very grateful for your help, Manager Hong. How can I be insatiable and borrow spiritual jades from you? Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, actually, the reason why I brought so many elixir materials back this time is because I'm preparing to start refining elixirs. I'll bring them over and sell them to you, Manager Hong. I believe it should be enough for the auction. That's great. Then I will wait and see young Hero Lin's work. Hong Zhong's eyes lit up and he nodded approvingly. After saying goodbye to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Lin Yi did not stay outside for long and immediately returned home. He could only put aside the matter of forging for the time being. Now that he had 2 heart-devouring exquisite grasses in his hands, it was naturally more important to first refine the foundation establishment pill. Strictly speaking, it had not been long since Lin Yi advanced to the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm. Before he completely stabilized his strength, even if he had the foundation establishment pill, he would not use it for the time being. After all, Haste makes waste, and this would easily cause side effects. Therefore, at least in a short period of time, Lin Yi still didn't need the foundation building pills, but it was better to be prepared. Currently, Lin Yi was only in the middle stage of the foundation building realm, and in the future, he would stay in the foundation building realm for a long time. For him, the more foundation building pills, the better, and there was no reason to complain about having too many. After an uneventful night, Lin Yi was already very familiar with alchemy. With the help of the divine armament cauldron, there were basically no mistakes. This time was the same. Lin Yi had thought that it would at least be the same as last time. After all, these two heart-devouring exquisite grasses were harvested from the wild by others this time. Unlike those cultivated in batches in the spirit medicine nursery, which had congenital defects, the quality of the heart-devouring exquisite grasses was slightly better than the previous one. However, the reality was that only 2 foundation establishment pills were successfully refined in the end. But in the cauldron, Lin Yi found 2 other useless pills, which meant that if everything went smoothly, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to use them. This time, he should have been able to refine 4 foundation building pills in one go, but he didn't expect that half of them would fail prematurely, causing him to sigh helplessly. This was something that couldn't be helped. No alchemist could maintain a 100% success rate. Even with the help of the divine armament cauldron, Lin Yi was no exception. It was inevitable that there would be waste pills. In addition to sighing with regret, he could only helplessly accept the reality. Lin Yi was not greedy. He was already very satisfied that he could refine 2 foundation establishment pills this time. As for whether these 2 pills would be enough for him to reach the peak of the middle stage of foundation establishment in the future, he could only wait until the future. If it was not enough, as long as Hong Zhong and Chen Heihu continued to help him, with the influence of these 2 people, Lin Yi believed that he would have the opportunity to purchase the heart-devouring exquisite grasses again in the future. As long as he had the heart-devouring exquisite grasses, the foundation establishment pills would naturally not be a problem. However, the waste pills were not completely useless. This waste foundation establishment pill had similar effects as the foundation establishment pill. It could allow people who did not build the foundation to successfully build the foundation, and the effect was better than the foundation establishment pill. After slightly adjusting his state, Lin Yi quickly prepared to refine pills again. This time, he was preparing to refine the foundation establishment barrier-breaking pill. Other than keeping a few for his own use, Lin Yi planned to sell most of the foundation establishment barrier-breaking pills to the Hong Chamber of Commerce according to the previous agreement. In this way, not only could he return a favor to Hong Zhong, but he could also raise a large amount of spirit jade to prepare for the auction, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. However, before Lin Yi could reopen the furnace again, the restriction outside the cave house was touched, and Lin Yi had to temporarily stop. Opening the door of the cave house, looking at the familiar old faces in front of him, Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. Hehe, what kind of wind is blowing today? What can I do for you guys? At this moment, standing in front of the door of the cave house was impressively Xu Lingchong, Kang Mingming, and Zhong Pingliang's group. Putting aside Lin Yi's identity, these people in front of him were currently Lin Yi's biggest enemies, especially after he had lost a capable subordinate like Meng Jueguang for nothing. This young master Xu Lingchong probably couldn't wait to quickly crush Lin Yi to death. At this moment, he had brought people to publicly knock on the door. What was the meaning of this? No matter what, it was still broad daylight, and some of the alarmed Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers were still watching from afar. Lin Yi predicted that even if the other party had 10 times the guts, they would definitely not dare to come knocking on his door in this kind of situation. Seeing that not only was Lin Yi not afraid, but instead had a carefree and condescending attitude, Xu Lingchong's chest immediately felt stifled. This time, he indeed didn't plan to play hard with Lin Yi, but in the end, he still wanted to put on a show of strength to suppress the scene. It would be best if he could scare Lin Yi to the point of pissing his pants in front of everyone, making him lose all face in front of everyone, and from then on, he wouldn't have the face to see anyone. So, this time, Xu Lingchong personally released a strong aura, unreservedly the full circle of foundation establishment. Such a terrifying aura was completely revealed, and if people like Kang Mingming and the others weren't hiding behind him, they would have long been unable to bear the pressure and directly kneel down. However, at this moment, standing in front of him, only 2 steps away from him, Lin Yi was as calm as the clouds and wind, as if nothing had happened, and this was really out of Shu Lingcheng's expectations. To be honest, if Lin Yi only had the strength of the early stage of foundation establishment, facing such a strong aura from the other party, there was really a possibility that he wouldn't be able to bear it. However, he was already an out-and-out mid-stage foundation establishment expert, and in addition to his own tenacity, his strength was also far above ordinary experts of the same level. If he couldn't even bear this little bit of aura from the other party, then what the hell was he supposed to do in the future? Chapter 3977. Shu Lingcheng's face darkened as he was mocked by a newcomer like Lin Yi. Next to him, Kang Mingming quickly jumped out and said, "Consider my ass. You're just a poor rogue cultivator. You're not even qualified to lick young Master Shu's toes. How can you be a security guard?" "Bullshit." Lin Yi laughed. "It doesn't matter if I'm qualified or not. I don't have the hobby of licking other people's toes. But you, Great Deacon Kang, are definitely qualified, right? Otherwise, how could you become someone's follower?" Kang Jiaoming choked and couldn't say anything for a while. Although everyone wanted to lick Master Shu's toes, practitioners had their own pride. If he were to say something like that, how would he be able to show his face in the welcome pavilion in the future? Seeing that Great Deacon Kang is so energetic, your injury should be almost healed. Just in time, the 10 days that Pavilion Master who mentioned last time are almost up. Can you quickly vacate your cave abode number 1 on the top of the mountain? I'm still waiting to exchange with the other newcomers of the Rising Sky Pavilion. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and said. Kang Ming's face suddenly stiffened again. He thought to himself, damn it, this situation is not right. I was obviously following young Master Shu to show off. Why did Lin Yi turn the tables with just a few words? In fact, because of his injury, Hu Yunfeng had given him a 4th-grade recover pill. Under the powerful effect of the pill, Kang Mingming's injury had almost recovered a few days ago. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to go to Murongzhen, that slut, and make love day and night. These days, Kang Mingming had been deliberately putting this matter at the back of his mind. He didn't even greet Shu Lingchong, his backer. He didn't expect that Lin Yi would expose it in front of Shu Lingchong. How would this end? Sure enough, Shu Lingchong immediately looked at Kang Mingming suspiciously and asked, Jiaoming, you want to give him the cave abode number 1 on the top of the mountain? What's going on? Recently, Shu Lingchong had been busy competing with the South Heaven Gate for the position of the first senior brother in charge of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Recently, he had finally made some progress, but immediately, Meng Jueguang's matter appeared. In addition, he had to preside over the Shangguan Lanus birthday party, so he had no time to take care of the small matters in Yingxin Pavilion. In addition, Kang Mingming didn't take the initiative to confess to him, and Hu Yunfeng didn't give Kang Mingming face, so Shu Lingchong didn't know anything about the inter-pavilion challenge. Kang Mingming stammered, unable to speak for a long time. Lin Yi saw this and chuckled, saying on his behalf, so young Master Shu still doesn't know. Great Deacon Kang purposely concealed military intelligence. It's a bit unjustifiable to be a follower. Well, since Great Deacon Kang is too embarrassed to say it, then I will say it for you. Young Master Shu, he lost the number 1 cave abode on the mountain top to me during the cross-pavilion challenge. According to what Pavilion Lord who said at that time, now that 10 days have passed, he naturally has to give up the cave abode to me. I can't let Pavilion Master who go back on his words, right? There's such a thing. Disappointing thing. I'll deal with you when we get back. Shu Lingchong's face couldn't help but turn gloomy. It wasn't that he didn't understand why Kang Mingming couldn't beat Lin Yi. But the thing that pissed him off the most was that Kang Jiaoming dared to hide it from him. This was intolerable. As a superior, there was one thing that Shu Lingchong hated and hated the most. It was his subordinates concealing military intelligence on their own, because this would cause the situation to get out of his control, and it would be very easy to end up like what was happening now. Lin Yi inexplicably took the initiative. Yes, young Master Shu, please calm down. I know I'm wrong. Kang Mingming quickly nodded and bowed, pretending to be sad as he explained, Young Master Shu, you have many matters to attend to. I also don't want to trouble young Master Shu because of such a small matter. As a younger brother, I can't share young Master Shu's worries, but instead, I've caused trouble for young Master Shu. I really don't have the face to open this mouth, so no matter how great the grievance is, I can only swallow it first and talk about it in the future. Kang Ming was really a master of acting. At that time, he concealed the information because he had selfish motives and didn't want to lose points in front of his master, but he was made into a tragic character who shouldered all the grievances. Even a smart person like Shu Lingchong was stunned by his words. In that case, I've blamed you wrongly. Based on Zhao Ming's rare kindness, I won't blame you. Shu Lingchong stretched out his hand and patted Kang Ming's shoulder, comforting him. You're an authentic pill master after all, it's not strange that you can't beat others. As long as you complete the task that I've assigned to you, you'll still have a great merit. Actually, did Shu Lingchong really not know what was going on? Actually, not necessarily. It was just that he was better at winning people's hearts than Meng Jueguang. Yes, thank you for young Master Shu's understanding. Zhao Ming dares not to give his all. Kang Ming was moved to tears of gratitude, like a gentleman dying for a bosom friend. Looking at this scene, Lin Yi was secretly speechless. Kang Ming was indeed an expert at flattering people. His flattery was watertight. Even someone like Shu Lingchong fell for it. It seemed that this fellow didn't rely on pure luck to be where he was today. However, in Lin Yi's view, a smart fellow like Shu Lingchong shouldn't be so easily deceived by Kang Ming. Maybe he had the intention to create an image of a broad-minded master so that his subordinates would be more willing to serve him. Hence, he was just taking the opportunity to cooperate with the act. All right, don't be in such a hurry to act. My question just now, can Great Deacon give me an accurate answer? Lin Yi had a mocking smile on his face as he interrupted them. Kang Ming was originally feeling complacent, but he immediately became depressed. Once the 10 days were up, the first cave abode on the mountain peak would have to be given to Lin Yi. This was a problem that couldn't be avoided no matter what. However, this cave abode on the mountain peak not only meant superior spiritual energy conditions to Kang Ming, but more importantly, it was a symbol of status. If Lin Yi occupied the cave abode for his own use, then it was fine. Kang Ming would at most be embarrassed. However, if he did as Lin Yi said and transferred the cave abode to another Soaring Sky Pavilion newcomer, then not only would he be embarrassed, but his position as the number 1 newcomer in Soaring Sky Pavilion would also be threatened. Even Shu Lingchong, who was behind him, would be affected. Chapter 3978. With Shu Lingchong's status as the heir of the young master, even the slightest damage to his image was extremely likely to be fatal. If it was continuously publicized by people with ulterior motives, no matter how small it would become a huge matter that could even affect whether he could successfully ascend to the position in the future. Shu Lingchong understood this point even more deeply than Kang Ming. He immediately threatened in a deep voice, the number 1 abode on the mountain peak, besides Kang Ming, I won't let it fall into the hands of anyone. No one. Lin Yi, do you want to try? Lin Yi instantly laughed. He wouldn't fall for this trick. He immediately raised his eyebrows and said, as expected of young Master Shu. How impressive. Unfortunately, this is the welcome pavilion. Young Master Shu, what you say doesn't seem to count. Or is young Master Shu going to overstep his authority and help pavilion manager who manage the newcomers under us? You have a sharp tongue. Shu Lingchong glared fiercely at Lin Yi, then suddenly laughed and said, ha ha ha, I was only joking. Young hero Lin, do you need to be so nervous? Just as you said, this is Hu Yunfeng's territory. I naturally won't overstep my authority. That's good. I thought young Master Shu wanted to erase the spoils of war that I painstakingly won with just one sentence. If it fell into the ears of the higher-ups, wouldn't it be too inexcusable? Lin Yi faintly smiled without fear. A person like Shu Lingchong, who had a deep background and a bright future, was perfect in all aspects to the point of being almost invulnerable. He indeed seemed to be an extremely powerful and terrifying opponent. However, he also had a huge weakness, which was that his ambition was too great. It was precisely because Shu Lingchong had great ambition that he had to care about his image. Not to mention sending people to assassinate Lin Yi, even a common small matter like suppressing newcomers couldn't be done because it would damage his glorious image. Otherwise, if he really had no scruples, with the disparity in strength and status, it would be impossible for Lin Yi to deal with him unscathed until today. Shu Lingchong's face stiffened. He could only say, "How can I make you give up the #1 abode on the mountain peak? Name a price." "You want me to name a price?" Lin Yi smiled meaningfully and said indifferently, "I'm sorry, I've already made an agreement with the other Soaring Sky Pavilion rookies. If I let Great Deacon Kang occupy the first cave mansion at the top of the mountain in the end, wouldn't it damage my reputation?" The meaning behind his words was clearly that he was ready to rip them off. Shu Lingchong disdained to argue with Lin Yi, who was a newcomer at the bottom, and he disliked the feeling of being manipulated by others even more. He immediately gave Kang Mingming a look, indicating that he should come forward to solve the problem. After all, he was the one who made the mistake. How could he let Shu Lingchong, the boss, personally clean up his mess? Kang Mingming could only bite the bullet and say, "As long as the conditions are right, nothing is impossible. Lin Yi, you should be very clear that the other Soaring Sky Pavilion rookies can't come up with better conditions than mine. Instead of letting those people benefit, it's better for you to benefit yourself, isn't it?" "Oh. What conditions did Great Deacon Kang prepare for me? Why don't you tell me?" Lin Yi said with great interest. Kang Mingming couldn't help but choke again. His weakness had fallen into Lin Yi's hands. He knew that he was definitely going to be ripped off today, and he couldn't escape. He could only say, "People die for wealth, and birds die for food. You just want spiritual jades, right? I'll give you 5 spiritual jades, how about it?" Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. 5 spiritual jades. The first cave mansion at the top of the mountain is only worth 5 spiritual jades in the eyes of Great Deacon Kang? Let me ask you, are you trying to get rid of a beggar? Then, 10 spiritual jades, that's a lot. Kang Mingming quickly said. Not enough. Lin Yi raised his eyelids indifferently. 20 spiritual jades, not one more. Otherwise, you can go find other people. I want to see how much they can give you. Kang Mingming gritted his teeth and said. Although the first cave mansion at the top of the mountain was good, the 1-year period given to the newcomers had already passed half a year ago. In other words, Kang Mingming's condition was equivalent to exchanging 20 spiritual jades for the right to use the first cave mansion at the top of the mountain for half a year. There was almost no better condition than this in the world. Of course, Kang Mingming was never a person who would suffer a loss for nothing. He dared to bid like this because he had seen the rumor that happened to Lin Yi before. The rumor that Lin Yi couldn't distinguish between good and bad jades, and was constantly being traded for good jades by Meng Tong and the others. The price of 20 good jades was definitely enough to make him die of heartache, but if they were exchanged for 20 bad jades, it would be no problem, and he could get them in minutes. Lin Yi was well aware of this. He sneered in his heart, and still said indifferently, Great Deacon Kang, you really are a person of status. You are generous when you open your mouth. Unfortunately, I don't want your 20 spiritual jades at all. What the hell? Kang Mingming almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Lin Yi with a face of disbelief. What the hell is wrong with this guy's brain? He doesn't want 20 spiritual jades at all? Who the hell do you think you are? Could it be that this guy has already realized my bad intentions? Kang Mingming's heart was beating fast, and he said with a gloomy face, Lin Yi, don't go too far. I advise you not to go too far. Don't go too far. I can't tell that Great Deacon Kang is quite reasonable. Unfortunately, you don't seem to have this awareness. Lin Yi curled his lips mockingly, and Kang Mingming was so embarrassed that his face turned purple. Then, he said, why don't I make it clear? I don't want the spiritual jades, but I want the spiritual herb seeds. As soon as these words came out, not only Kang Mingming, but even Shu Lingchong was stunned. Putting 20 spiritual jades together with the spiritual herb seeds, any normal person would know which one to choose. Although the spiritual herb seeds had the hope of survival, unless it was in a professional place like the spiritual medicine nursery, the possibility of survival was very small. For most people, it was basically of little value. However, during the spiritual herb assessment, Lin Yi had once cultivated 39 spiritual herb seeds out of 40. No matter what methods he used, the spiritual herb seeds might really be a money-making machine in his hands. How many spiritual herb seeds do you want? Kang Ming asked in a low voice. Lin Yi didn't want the spiritual jades, and instead asked for the spiritual herb seeds. To him, it wasn't a bad thing. Anyway, because of Shu Lingcheng's care, he had recently built a relationship with many people with power in the pill hall. Even if the spiritual flower manager of the spiritual medicine nursery was lukewarm to him because of the previous incident of slandering Lin Yi, if he only wanted to get some spiritual herb seeds, it wouldn't be a problem. Chapter 3979. The value was not high, so naturally, the security would not be too strict. Hence, for people like Kang Ming who had connections, getting some spiritual medicine seeds was almost a piece of cake. It would be best if he could use them to get rid of Lin Yi. Just like the previous spiritual medicine assessment, 40 spiritual medicine seeds will form a group. Give me 5 groups, Lin Yi said immediately. This was something that Lin Yi had thought about long ago. If he wanted the heart-devouring exquisite grass, other than looking for Hong Zhong and Chen Heihu to help him purchase it, the other way was to get the spiritual medicine nursery's spiritual medicine. It was a pity that he was not a member of the pill hall and did not have any reliable connections. It was obviously impossible for him to rely on himself. On the other hand, Kang Ming had been doing very well in the pill hall under Shu Lingcheng's care. It was said that he had even reserved a position in the pill hall in advance. Once the welcoming pavilion was over, he could immediately join the pill hall. It was a good opportunity to get this idea from him. However, it was impossible for Lin Yi to directly ask for the heart-devouring exquisite grass seeds. In order to fool people, he could only do the same as the previous spiritual medicine assessment and ask for all 40 spiritual medicine seeds. Anyway, they could be used as spiritual medicine reserves in the future, so it would not be a waste to ask for more. 40 spiritual medicine seeds a group and you want 5 groups. Are you crazy for the spiritual medicine seeds? Do you think that the pill hall is opened by my family and you can take anything you want? Kang Ming instantly jumped up. It was true that he had the connections to get the spiritual medicine seeds, but if Lin Yi wanted 5 groups, that would be a total of 200 spiritual medicine seeds. If this was discovered, it would be a big problem. After all, Kang Ming was not an internal member of the pill hall. Even if others took care of him for Shu Lingcheng's sake, they would not put themselves in danger just to help him. Lin Yi also knew that this was too unrealistic. However, when it came to transactions, one had to pay the price as high as one could. He immediately said, "Fine, then I will reluctantly take a step back." 4 groups. Impossible. Kang Ming refused again. It seemed that Lin Yi had taken a step back, but there were still 160 pills in 4 groups, which was not a small number, and the risk was not small. Lin Yi's expression immediately turned cold. He stretched out his hand to send them off and said, "If that's the case, then there's nothing to talk about. Take care. Forgive me for not sending you off." Wait, 3 groups. 3 groups at most. It's impossible to have more than that, Kang Ming said quickly. In reality, even if the 3rd group had 120 spiritual herb seeds, they still had to take risks. But now that the initiative was in the hands of Lin Yi, there was nothing he could do. Moreover, behind him stood Shu Lingcheng, his master's backing. This time, Shu Lingcheng wasn't here to help him clean up his mess. If he didn't agree to Lin Yi's conditions and delayed Shu Lingcheng's proper business, then it wouldn't be justifiable. 3 groups. Lin Yi pondered for a moment and then said, "Then I still want the cave dwelling. 4 groups is my bottom line, otherwise there's no need to talk about it." You. Kang Ming was just about to get angry, but Shu Lingcheng interrupted him impatiently and said to Lin Yi, "Okay, I will give you 4 groups. Don't mention this again in the future." "No problem. However, I will say the ugly words first. Send them to me before tomorrow's sunset. If you are late or any one of them is missing, this agreement will not be valid. At that time, the number 1 cave dwelling on the top of the mountain will have nothing to do with you, understand?" Lin Yi said. It's a deal. Kang Ming had to bite the bullet and agree. Although the time was a little tight, this matter was easy to handle since Shu Lingchong came forward. With Shu Lingchong's face, he didn't need to take any risks and he could get back the number 1 cave dwelling on the top of the mountain from Lin Yi. For Kang Ming, this deal was already very worthwhile. There was no need to continue to dawdle like this. Otherwise, if he angered Lin Yi, he would be finished. Then I will wait for Great Deacon Kang's good news. Lin Yi smiled faintly. 4 groups of elixir seeds meant that there were 4 seeds of the heart-devouring exquisite grass, which was already a rare surprise. At this time, Shu Lingchong finally said, "Since the matter between you two is over, then I will talk about the purpose of this time's visit. Lin Yi, I heard that you once saved little junior sister Lan in the back mountain. Hehe, where did young Master Shu hear this news?" Lin Yi was slightly stunned. Immediately, Lin Yi glanced meaningfully at Murong Zhen, who was watching from afar. He knew that this matter must have come from the mouth of this woman, and she must have changed her appearance. Otherwise, if she really told the truth, with Shu Lingchong's position, it was impossible for him to let this sinister woman who wanted to kill Shangguan Lena go. He would have already killed her with a slap. Shu Lingchong pretended to be profound as he smiled complacently. In a place like the 3 great pavilions, as long as I want to know something, it's naturally as easy as flipping my hand. Looking at your performance, it should be true, right? So what? Lin Yi asked non-committally. Although he had the intention to help Shangguan Lena get rid of the threat of Murong Zhen, he had never planned to use Shu Lingchong's hand. After all, he still did not know what Shangguan Lena would say about the matter of the Half-Moon Lake. If he said something wrong and was caught by others, that would not be good. Logically speaking, a newcomer like you is not qualified to have any interaction with a high and mighty little princess like little junior sister Lan. However, little junior sister Lan is a person who values friendship. Because of this matter, she feels that she owes you a favor. Of course, she also helped you in the law enforcement hall last time, so we should be even. Shu Lingchong said in a condescending tone. That is also thanks to young Master Shu. It seems that this favor will still fall on young Master Shu's head in the future. Lin Yi replied with his eyes narrowed. Shu Lingchong turned a deaf ear to this and pretended not to hear it. He continued, Lin Yi, remember one thing for me. Little junior sister Lan is a high and mighty little princess. She is not someone that a small grass root like you can touch. If you want to continue to live well, then stay as far away from her as possible. Do you understand what I mean? Lin Yi smiled ambiguously, then looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot, and said lightly, young Master Shu mobilized so many people and came all the way here. Is it just to say this to me? Of course not. In order to cut off your poor and humble fantasy, so that you will not continue to harass little junior sister Lan with the small favor in the back mountain, I decided to make an exception and send you, a newcomer at the bottom, an invitation. Shu Lingchong winked at Kang Ming, who was next to him. Kang Ming immediately handed an invitation to Lin Yi. Chapter 3980. Shangguan Lena's birthday was coming soon. This was something she once said to him. Lin Yi was still having a headache about how to sneak in. He did not expect that this problem was actually solved by Shu Lingchong, his nemesis. It was simply ridiculous. Yes, it is reasonable to say that a low-level trash like you will not be able to enter such a high-level banquet in your next life. This time, this young master is returning a favor to you on behalf of junior sister Lena. At the same time, I will also let you see clearly the gap between us. How big the gap is, so that you will not be obsessed and entangled. Shu Lingchong said disdainfully. With that, Shu Lingchong didn't care about Lin Yi's expression and immediately led Kang Jiaoming and the others away with their heads held high. Lin Yi, on the other hand, smiled nonchalantly. He thought about what these people had done today. They'd given him the seeds of the elixir, and now they'd sent him an invitation to the birthday banquet. This was the perfect service. He didn't understand why they were so smug about it. Also, Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong used to have this expression every time they sent him spiritual jades. The IQ of the people on Heaven Stage Island was really low. However, it was no wonder that in the cultivation world of Heaven Stage Island, although there was no lack of intrigue, in the final analysis, it was more dependent on strength. Therefore, it was normal that they were certainly not as smart as the people in the secular world. Because these people were generally thinking about how to cultivate. No wonder Kang Ming could be put in an important position. Such a mean person. Xu Lingchong was afraid that it was the first time he had seen such a person. After the interlude, Lin Yi returned to the cave residence and continued to concentrate on refining the foundation-breaking pill. This time, because the elixir materials were extremely abundant in advance, and Lin Yi had the intention to refine more in exchange for spiritual jades, he refined 3 batches in a row in one breath. Fortunately, it was the Shennong medicine cauldron. If it was replaced by other ordinary alchemy cauldrons, it would have exploded because of Lin Yi's desperate efforts. Shennong medicine cauldron had no other abnormal reaction from beginning to end except that the temperature was slightly higher than usual. Everything was normal. After 3 batches, Lin Yi could be said to have a great harvest this time. A total of 13 foundation breaking pills were refined, and each of them was of the best quality. If these 13 top-grade foundation establishment barrier breaking pills were all sold to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, even if they were sold at the lowest price of 800 spiritual jades each, they would still be worth at least 10,000 spiritual jades. That would be more than enough for the auction. Plus, he still had the 1,000-year tree crystal and the bag of blood-red gravel in his hands. He couldn't use them for crafting, but he could sell them if he needed to, and he'd be able to earn a huge sum of money in no time. This time, in order to collect the casting materials mentioned by the King of Junk, Lin Yi could be said to have gone all out. If it was in the past, even if Lin Yi was short of spiritual jades, it would be impossible for him to sell so many best-quality foundation-breaking pills. After all, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. Once this matter reached the ears of someone with ulterior motives, it would easily cause trouble, just like the secret of the star inkstone being exposed. However, this time, Lin Yi had no other choice. According to the King of Junk, if he did not have tens of thousands of spiritual jades, even if he was qualified for the auction, it would be difficult to collect the other 6 materials except for the mysterious water droplet. The worst thing was that once he missed this auction, it would be impossible to collect these materials in a short period of time. Fortunately, after so many dealings, Lin Yi had a better understanding of Hong Zhong's character. This person was not a short-sighted person. Even if he was given a lot of best-quality foundation-breaking pills, as long as he was careful not to be discovered by outsiders, it should not be too big of a problem. The next evening, Kang Ming delivered 4 sets of spiritual medicine seeds as promised. Lin Yi carefully counted them, and after confirming that there were 4 heart-devouring exquisite grass seeds among them, he received them with satisfaction. He transplanted all 4 sets of spiritual medicine seeds into the space of the jade pendant. As long as he took care of them carefully, he would be able to harvest 4 heart-devouring exquisite grass in a few months. In addition to the 2 foundation-building pills he had on hand, it should be enough to support the next 2 breakthroughs. Of course, this was just a silly assumption. After all, after asking Hong Zhong and Chen Heihu to help him purchase the foundation-building pills, together with the 4 heart-devouring exquisite grass seeds, the heart-devouring exquisite grass that he needed in the future was guaranteed to a certain extent. Therefore, for Lin Yi, it was not necessary to keep the 2 foundation-building pills for himself. He could not use them in a short period of time, but in the long run, he did not need to worry about the heart-devouring exquisite grass. Therefore, there was no need for Lin Yi to cling on to these 2 best-quality foundation-building pills. They would be more valuable if he used them elsewhere. In the following period of time, Lin Yi could concentrate on his cultivation without any distractions. Apart from occasionally discussing matters related to casting with the King of Junk, there was nothing else to disturb him. Practicing diligently, not caring about stabilizing the strength of the middle stage of foundation building realm, until he could fully control every bit of strength and every trace of genuine qi in his body, this was what Lin Yi was doing now. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, it was the 8th day of the Lunar New Year. The birthday banquet of Lena, the first miss of the Sky-Reaching Pavilion, slowly began in the most high-end Huiyang house in the Sky-Reaching Pavilion. With the invitation, Lin Yi immediately went to the Sky-Reaching Pavilion. This was the first time that he had entered the core area of the Sky-Reaching Pavilion since he arrived at the Heaven Stage Island, and he did it openly. With the birthday banquet invitation in his hand, he was naturally unimpeded. However, every time he passed through a layer of guards, he would be carefully interrogated. This feeling of being regarded as a thief really made him speechless. There was no other way. After all, he was not an internal member of the sky-reaching pavilion, and he did not have a strong background at first glance. At the entrance of the Huayang house, Xu Lingchong, as the organizer of this birthday banquet, stood at the entrance with his hardcore brothers, Lu Tianyu, and others, to welcome the guests. What made Lin Yi quite surprised was that even Kang Mingming was among them. Originally, Kang Mingming's insignificant status was the same as Lin Yi's. He was not qualified to appear in such a high-end occasion, let alone to stand at the entrance and welcome the guests together with Xu Lingchong and Lu Tianyu, the young masters of the sky-reaching pavilion. It should be known that the people who entered the birthday banquet today were either the top management of the three pavilions or the real power figures of a certain force. Every one of them was a real big boss. Even if they were to welcome the guests, they would at least be at the level of a young master with a strong background. Ordinary people would not have the opportunity to show their faces in front of these big bosses. The fact that Kang Mingming could be among these people could only mean that this guy was really good at flattering. Otherwise, Xu Lingchong would not have supported him so much. Chapter 3981. Lin Yi was about to enter when he suddenly felt an overbearing and powerful aura behind him. Turning his head to look, he saw that the person who came into view was the current law enforcement hall master, Ram Jie, whom he had met once before. In this kind of gathering of dignitaries, most people would consciously restrain their aura, lest they accidentally arouse the dissatisfaction of some big shot, which would then cause unnecessary trouble. But the most popular young powerhouse of the three great pavilions in front of him did not have the slightest intention of doing so. He did what he wanted and did not care about others. However, even if he did not restrain himself, from beginning to end, no one around him was dissatisfied. Instead, they even took the initiative to nod to him. Among them, there was no lack of elders from the three great pavilions. Lin Yi's heart could not help but tremble. Breaking the norm with his own strength, and making everyone around him accustomed to it without any gossip, it could be imagined how strong the strength behind this was. This Ram Jie was really not to be trifled with. Along the way, wherever Ram Jie passed, everyone retreated to make way for him. No one had the guts to block in front of him, until it was Lin Yi's turn. Even without turning his head, Lin Yi could clearly feel that an incomparably cold and overbearing aura was right behind him, very close at hand, only one step away. For a moment, all eyes were focused on Lin Yi. Who is this person? He looks unfamiliar. I've never seen him before. Could he be the nephew of one of the elders? Someone in the crowd whispered. To be qualified to attend Miss Shangguan's birthday banquet, he was naturally someone with a powerful background. It was normal for them to guess so. Hey, no matter which family's young master this person is, he dares to block in front of Hall Master Ram. I can only say to him that the ignorant are fearless. Yes, this person probably doesn't even recognize Hall Master Ram. He doesn't even know the taboo. How pitiful. Wherever I go, no one will be able to stop me. These are words personally spoken by Lord Gongyang. Even the upper echelons of the Elder Council will deliberately cooperate with him. This brat is so insensible. He's going to be in big trouble today. The people at the side discussed with Schadenfreude, and all of them looked like they were waiting to watch a good show. With Lin Yi's keen senses, although these discussions were intentionally suppressed, he was still able to sense them. But it still couldn't escape his eyes and ears. In a place like this, it wasn't wise to offend a powerful figure like Ram Jie for such an inexplicable small matter. However, just as Lin Yi was about to move aside like everyone else, Xu Lingchong, who was in front, suddenly said, "Yo, isn't this the strongest newcomer in the history of Blue Cloud Pavilion? Lin Yi, it's really an honor for me and little junior sister Lan that you're willing to do us the honor of attending our birthday party. Come, this way please." His words caused an uproar in the audience, including Ram Jie, who was standing behind Lin Yi. They also stopped in their tracks. The strongest newcomer in the history of Blue Cloud Pavilion, isn't that miracle Dr. Dan St. Zhongliju? Since when was it this bullshit Lin Yi's turn? Yeah, But I heard that this Lin Yi seems to be from the common world like Grandmaster Zhongliju. It seems like he's someone who came from the common world like Grandmaster Zhongliju, and he's pretty famous in the pavilion. Bullshit. He's just a grassroots newcomer with some insignificant strength. How can he be so arrogant? Does he think that he can become the next Grandmaster Zhong just by stepping on some dog shit? He's the only one in tens of thousands of years. How can he be so arrogant? Just because of Shu Lingchong's words, everyone's voices rose one after another, and they instantly put Lin Yi on the stake. Not only did he become the target of everyone, but he was also in a dilemma. This guy really was evil. Lin Yi couldn't help but look at Shu Lingchong deeply. The reason why he suddenly said this was obvious. No matter how bad the people around him were, they were still inner disciples of Soaring Sky Pavilion, and each of them had a strong background. Even they might not have the right to attend Miss Shangguan's birthday banquet, and now they suddenly found out that a grassroots newcomer like Lin Yi was able to attend. It would be strange if he didn't become the target of everyone. Other than being talked about and looked down on, there was another problem in front of Lin Yi, and that was Ram Jie who was behind him. If Shu Lingchong hadn't said that, Lin Yi would have just stepped aside. After all, it was the same for everyone else. But after Shu Lingchong's words of praise and mockery, the situation was completely different. Choosing to step back now was no longer something that could be ignored. It could only mean one thing. In front of Ram Jie, in front of everyone, Lin Yi voluntarily gave up. Lin Yi didn't care, but he was here for Shangguan Lena. If he gave up now, perhaps Shangguan Lena would lose face. Therefore, Lin Yi was in a dilemma. However, if he didn't step back, he was likely to offend the high and mighty law enforcement hall master, Ram Jie, behind him. After all, he once swore that no one can stop me wherever I go. Just by looking at his courageous spirit, one could tell what kind of Taoist heart he held. Even the elders of the three pavilions had to tolerate him, let alone a grassroots newcomer like Lin Yi. If he didn't step back, he would offend Ram Jie. If he stepped back, he might make Shangguan Lena lose face. This was Lin Yi's current situation. Today's birthday banquet was indeed a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. He had just arrived and he had already encountered such a difficult problem. Under everyone's gaze, Lin Yi suddenly moved. However, what caused everyone to be in an uproar was that he actually had the guts not to step back. Instead, he walked straight to Shu Lingchong and the others, took out the invitation letter and said indifferently, "Young Master Shu, can I go in now?" Heh! Shu Lingchong was stunned. He had never thought that Lin Yi would have such a reaction. Or rather, he had never thought that Lin Yi would have such guts. If he were in Lin Yi's shoes, even young Master Shu, who had a strong background, would not dare to block in front of Ram Jie. What he had said just now was just to make Lin Yi look bad. He had never thought that this guy would be stupid enough to directly make the stupidest choice. It was so stupid that it made people run with joy. In the face of such a pleasant surprise, Shu Lingchong naturally couldn't ask for more. He looked at Lu Tianyu and Kang Mingming, then secretly glanced at Ram Jie's expression. Chapter 3982. This young Master Shu changed his attitude really quickly. Everyone was speechless. Just now, it was clearly his words that forced this Lin Yi into a dilemma, and now he was using the hierarchy to teach people a lesson. He was really mean and shameless. However, everyone was just watching the show. All of them were already unhappy with Lin Yi, so of course, they couldn't jump out and speak up for justice at this time. They even hoped that Lin Yi would be trampled to death by Ram Jie, a typical case of watching a good show. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Huh? Did I hear wrongly just now? Could it be that the one who called me in wasn't young Master Shu, but some guard dog that doesn't know the rules? Or could it be that the invitation that young Master Shu personally delivered to my doorstep is fake, and I actually don't have the qualifications to enter and was just played by you? Shu Lingchong was instantly speechless. Making things difficult for Lin Yi was just an idea that came to his mind on the spur of the moment. He originally thought that in front of Ram Jie's overbearing power, trash like Lin Yi would definitely be scared shitless. Who would have thought that this guy didn't have the slightest bit of fear, and actually had the mood to beat around the bush and insult him? Logically, Lin Yi indeed didn't have any wrongdoing. Although the three great pavilions paid attention to the hierarchy, at the same time, there was the rule of first come, first served. Other people making way for Ram Jie was their own consciousness, and they were afraid of Ram Jie, but it didn't mean that everyone had to do so. After a long time, Shu Lingchong sneered with a gloomy face, but he didn't speak. As long as he didn't speak, the guards wouldn't let Lin Yi enter, and this was the effect he wanted to achieve. No matter how sharp Lin Yi's mouth was, so what? He, young Master Shu, didn't need to speak at all. As long as he blocked the person here, Ram Jie would naturally come out to deal with Lin Yi. As expected, Ram Jie spoke very quickly, and the first thing he said shocked everyone. "You're Lin Yi." Not only the people present, but even Lin Yi himself was a little surprised. He had only met Ram Jie once. They had not even met once. After all, during the coercion resistance test in the law enforcement hall, Lin Yi had only stood in the crowd and glanced at Ram Jie from afar. However, Ram Jie had not paid any attention to a nobody like Lin Yi. However, Ram Jie's words clearly meant that he had at least heard of the existence of Lin Yi, which was an incredible thing in anyone's eyes. After thinking about it, Lin Yi felt that the reason why the other party had heard of him was because of the other party. The only possibility was that when Shanghai Lena came to the law enforcement hall to help him out, she had attracted the attention of the other party. "Yes, I'm Lin Yi. Nice to meet you, Hallmaster Ram." Lin Yi turned around and cupped his hands. Ram Jie looked Lin Yi up and down carefully, which made people look at each other in dismay. The arrogance of the Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall was well known in the North Island. Even if the elders of the three great pavilions were standing opposite him, he did not even bother to look at them. What on earth was Lin Yi capable of making Ram Jie look at him so differently? After a while, Ram Jie spoke slowly, with an unquestionable domineering and strong tone. "If it were someone else, they would have been dead by now. Those who dared to block my path are already dead, but you, Lin Yi, can let them off the hook." For a while, the audience was in an uproar again, and even Lin Yi himself was shocked inexplicably. With Ram Jie's arrogance, he never lied. To be precise, he never disdained to lie in front of anyone. If he said he wanted to kill someone, then even if this was Shanghai Lena's birthday party, and even if the masters of the three great pavilions were present, they could not stop him at all. However, he was especially lenient to Lin Yi in public. What was going on? Lin Yi himself was a little confused. He had no friendship with Ram Jie. Why did he make Ram Jie treat him differently? You'd better not misunderstand what I mean. I have an old acquaintance who is indebted to you for taking care of him, so I'm giving him face. As for you, you're nothing more than an ant. You're not even worthy of my attention. Gong Yangjie gave a rare explanation. His disdain for Lin Yi came from the arrogance in his bones. He did not hide it at all, and there was no need to hide it at all. With the current gap in strength between them, Lin Yi was the same as everyone else present. In his eyes, Lin Yi was just an insignificant ant, without the slightest weight, let alone any status to speak of. This feeling of being looked down upon from above, even with Lin Yi's indifferent temperament, gave birth to a rare trace of displeasure, but he did not show it on his face. "In that case, I have to thank that friend." Lin Yi smiled calmly. The friend he mentioned was naturally Shanghai Lena. After all, from Ram Jie's words, it was not difficult to infer that he deliberately let him go for the sake of Shanghai Lena. This kind of thing was not surprising. Looking at the whole three pavilions in the North Island, Shanghai Tianhua was the only one who could make Ram Jie bow his head. As the only granddaughter of Shanghai Tianhua, Shanghai Lena naturally had a lot of weight in Ram Jie's eyes. The fact that Shanghai Lena could successfully bring Lin Yi out of the law enforcement hall last time was proof. As for the relationship between Lin Yi and Shangguan Lan although he had been purposely hiding it from Shu Lingchong and the others, if this Gong Yangjie in front of him wanted to know something, there was no way to hide it. As everyone said, in the eyes of the law enforcement hall, there were no secrets, and in the eyes of Ram Jie, the head of the law enforcement hall, it was naturally so. "I hope you didn't find the wrong person." When Ram Jie heard this, the corner of his mouth involuntarily raised into a playful smile. Of course, he could guess what Lin Yi was thinking in his heart. Unfortunately, he might give face to Shanghai Tianhua, but how could a little girl like Shanghai Lena have so much face in his eyes? It was ridiculous. However, Ram Jie did not intend to expose him at all. He did not intend to reveal anything to Lin Yi, and he was even more disinclined to talk to such an insignificant ant. Glancing at Ram Jie's expression that seemed to be smiling yet not smiling, Lin Yi's heart slightly jolted. But if Ram Jie didn't explain, it was impossible for him to figure out what exactly Ram Jie meant. So, he immediately turned around and said to Shu Lingchong, "Now I can finally go in, right, young Master Shu?" Shu Lingchong's expression was stiff as the corner of his mouth drew back. This time, it was rare for him to be able to make things difficult for Lin Yi in front of everyone, but even if he was beaten to death, he would never have imagined that such a miraculous turn of events would actually occur. Even Ram Jie treated Lin Yi differently. Motherfucker, could it be that this world had gone mad? However, now that even the great god, Ram Jie, had spoken, it was unrealistic for Shu Lingchong to want to use this kind of matter to make things difficult for Lin Yi. Otherwise, if he didn't make things difficult for Lin Yi, he would instead arouse Ram Jie's displeasure, and that would be a huge joke. Chapter 3983. Please go ahead. Shu Lingchong had to signal Lu Tianyu and the others to let him pass. His eyes were full of mockery. Anyway, the show had just begun. The entire birthday party was arranged by him. It was easy for him to punish Lin Yi. There would be plenty of opportunities later. After letting Lin Yi go in with a sneer, Shu Lingchong and the others immediately bowed to Ram Jie, who followed closely behind. His face was full of joy. "Hall leader Ram, please come in." Entering the interior of Huayang House, the originally magnificent hall became even more dreamy and fantasy-like because every place was carefully decorated, as if it were a paradise of immortals. At this moment, although many of the top big shots had not yet appeared, there were many people who had arrived in advance. They exchanged greetings and made friends with each other. Those who could come here today were not ordinary people. Now was the best opportunity to expand their social network. However, Lin Yi obviously did not have this kind of idea. After looking around casually, he did not find Shanghai Lena, the main character of the birthday party. So he found a secluded corner and sat down. He drank the high-grade spirit tea provided for free at the birthday party. He was quite comfortable. Different from Lin Yi, who was ignored, Ram Jie, who followed closely behind, immediately became the focus of the audience. However, because he was too famous and arrogant, everyone in the audience was in awe of him. No one dared to go up and strike up a conversation with him. Looking around, Ram Jie's subsequent action made Lin Yi's eyelids twitch. This person actually walked directly in his direction. Then, without saying anything, he directly sat down on the seat opposite Lin Yi. What did this person want to do? Lin Yi could not help but secretly speculate. However, after the other person sat down, he did not take any further action. He just reclined on the spacious chair lazily and coldly looked at the people and things in the venue at the moment. Lin Yi quietly looked at the other person. Seeing that he did not move, he immediately ignored him and still sat there with his arms crossed. His expression was relaxed and calm. The two of them sat across from each other. Because of Ram Jie, almost everyone in the audience couldn't help but glance at them before silently withdrawing their gazes. If they looked for too long, they were afraid that Ram Jie would be displeased. After a while, Ram Jie suddenly spoke, "What's your relationship with Zhong Liju?" Lin Yi was taken aback for a moment, then replied with his usual expression, "Hall Master Gong Yang must be joking. Master Zhong is the top big shot of Middle Island, and I'm just a grassroots newcomer. How is it possible for you to be related to him?" Unexpectedly, Ram Jie said directly, "You're lying." Lin Yi was speechless. He was indeed lying, but even Zhong Liju himself didn't know about his relationship with Zhong Liju, and he never told anyone about it. How could this Ram Jie know? First, you and Zhong Liju are both from the common world. Second, you and Zhong Liju are both elixir refiners. Third, after coming to Sky-class Island, you've been asking around for information about Zhong Liju many times, and you're saying that it's not a problem? Ram Jie laid on his side with one hand under his chin, looking at Lin Yi from the corner of his eyes. Lin Yi was shocked. He never thought that a mere grassroots newbie like him would be investigated so thoroughly by the high and mighty Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall. He was really overwhelmed by the favor. lying in front of me. It's meaningless. Ram Jie didn't know why he was so talkative. He lazily pointed at his head. All the information about the Hall of Law is reflected in my head. If necessary, I can use the soul-searching technique at any time. Do you want to try? Nope. What do you want from me, Hall Master Gongyang? Just say it. Lin Yi said in a low voice. Haha. Gongyang Jie immediately laughed. Little brat, don't make people laugh anymore. Why would I look for an ant-like newbie like you? It's just to relieve boredom. Don't worry, I'm not bored enough to use the soul-searching technique on you. I'm just curious about your relationship with Zhong Liju. Lin Yi kept quiet for a while and said faintly, I have nothing to do with Master Zhong Liju. If I must say there is, then I'd say that I'm looking for Master Zhong to help me save someone. Save those inheritors in the common world? I didn't know that you were such an affectionate person. It's fine. If you meet Zhong Liju, please pass a message for me. Speaking up to here, Gong Yangji's eyes suddenly became a bit cold, like a knife scraping across one's skin, causing one's hair to stand on end. Tell him that this king will return the humiliation of that defeat 100-fold. Tell him not to worry, that day will not be too far away. All right. Lin Yi's face didn't change, but his heart was in turmoil. This was the first time he heard that Ram Jie had fought with Zhong Liju before. With Zhong Liju's legendary experience, it was normal for someone as strong as Ram Jie to lose to him. However, what shocked Lin Yi even more was that Ram Jie had the confidence to take revenge against Zhong Liju, who was one of the top bosses in Zhongdao. Just how strong was he? Thinking about it carefully, although Lin Yi couldn't tell how strong or weak Gong Yangjie was, he could tell from the way Gong Yangjie treated the higher-ups of the Elders Guild that this person was definitely not to be underestimated. His strength was probably far above that of a normal elder. A person like this was called the number one in the new generation of the three pavilions. As the two were talking, Lin Yi suddenly saw a few people coming in from the corner of his eye. They were all familiar faces that he didn't want to see the most. The three of them, Yuzha at the back, followed by Southern Skygate, and at the front was a middle-aged man who looked extremely handsome. It was the leader of the three Nan brothers, Nan Tianba. Along the way, Southern Skygate whispered, Boss, did you see the kid next to Shu Lingchong? That's Kang Ming. I'm starting to suspect that he's that Lin Yuzha, who was behind him, followed up, this disciple feels the same way. If Kang Jiaoming didn't give Shu Lingchong something as precious as the Star Inkstone, would Shu Lingchong support him so much just because he's just a newbie? Would he even bring him out to welcome guests? Strictly speaking, even an inner disciple like Yuzha with an ordinary background wasn't qualified to welcome guests at Miss Shangguan's birthday banquet, let alone a mere Kang Ming. Yuzha was jealous. Chapter 3984. With Nan Tianba's protective nature, if he could confirm that Kang Ming was Lin then he would not hesitate to kill Kang Ming to avenge his third brother, Nan Tianyong. However, it was only a suspicion, and there was no concrete evidence. This matter was not easy to deal with. One had to know that the agreement between them and Shu Lingchong was not made by the few of them alone. The fact that the two sides were able to shake hands and make peace was the result of the mutual compromise between the powers behind them. If they acted rashly, not only would they offend the other party, even the powers behind them would be dissatisfied. They would offend both inside and outside. No matter how hot Nan Tianba's temper was, he would not do such a stupid thing. Hearing this, Nan Tianba could only remain silent. He was currently at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm, and the temptation of the Star Inkstone was greater than anyone else's. However, he was currently in a situation where he could not act even though he had his suspicions. As he spoke, Nan Tianba had already led the way. The direction he was heading towards was where Ram Jie and Lin Yi were. Hallmaster Ram, long time no see. Walking forward, Nan Tianba took the initiative to greet Lin Yi. As for an insignificant person like Lin Yi, he was completely ignored. Ram Jie raised his eyelids and glanced at him. About the proposal from last time, have you thought about it? This matter. I still need to think about it carefully. Nan Tianba hesitated for a moment and glanced at Lin Yi, as if there was a secret that couldn't be revealed to outsiders. He immediately said in a harsh tone, Who do you think you are? How dare you sit here and disturb the conversation between Hallmaster Ram and me? Hurry up and scram. Lin Yi immediately furrowed his eyebrows. Although Nan Tianba was strong, compared to Ram Jie, there was still a huge gap. Even Ram Jie wasn't this arrogant, so who did Nan Tianba think he was? I'm sorry, I don't have the habit of giving way to others. If you want to talk with Hallmaster Ram, why don't you consider changing the location? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and said calmly. Brat, what did you say? Nan Tianba's temper immediately flared up. As for Ram Jie, he was still lazily reclining on his chair, looking as if he had nothing to do with this matter. I'm not interested in repeating myself. If Your Excellency has a problem with your ears, I suggest that you find a doctor. You might be able to cure it. Lin Yi was still indifferent. No matter how strong the other party was, as long as the other party provoked him, Lin Yi never knew how to retreat. When enemies meet on a narrow path, the courageous will win. A coward would never be able to stand at the pinnacle of experts. You are courting death. These words were completely squeezed out from the gaps between Nan Tianba's teeth. He never thought that he would be provoked by such a weak ant in front of everyone. Lin Yi's strength in the middle stage of foundation establishment couldn't be hidden from his eyes. In front of an aloof gold core stage expert like him, Lin Yi could only be regarded as a weakling. As his voice fell, Nan Tianba's ferocious aura suddenly rose to the extreme, causing the audience to cry out in alarm. A gold core stage expert was no small matter. However, what was even more surprising was that there was still someone who dared to make a move on such an occasion. This is Miss Shangguan's birthday banquet. Before Your Excellency makes a move, it's best to think about the consequences first. Lin Yi calmly said. If the other party was Ram Jie, perhaps it was really possible for him to make a move here without any scruples. However, if it was someone else, even if it was a fierce character like Nan Tianba, they might not have the guts to do so. Making a move here. It was equivalent to smashing Shangguan Lena's place. Even more so, it was equivalent to smashing Shangguan Tianhua's place. Not just anyone could have this kind of confidence. In front of a super big shot like Shangguan Tianhua, a gold core stage expert was just an ant. Moreover, intuition told Lin Yi that Nan Tianba wasn't as hot-tempered and brainless as he looked on the surface. He wouldn't do something so stupid as to put himself in danger just to teach a small character like him a lesson. Sure enough, Nan Tianba's aura suddenly stagnated. He coldly looked down at Lin Yi and said, Brat, you have guts. What's your name? Without waiting for Lin Yi to speak, Southern Skygate and Yuzhe had already moved forward and whispered a few words into his ear. Not only did they know Lin Yi's identity and name, they even told Lin Yi their previous test. To be honest, seeing Lin Yi in a place like this, especially when Lin Yi was sitting so openly in front of Ram Jie, Southern Skygate and Yuzhe couldn't react at all. Even if they recognized him at first glance, they still couldn't believe it. It wasn't until now that they could finally confirm that this guy was the newcomer from Blue Cloud Pavilion that they had suspected before. Heh, what kind of world is this? Even a mere newcomer from Blue Cloud Pavilion can sneak into this place. Or could it be that you simply took advantage of the fact that the guards were lax to sneak in? Nan Tianba sneered as he listened to the whole story. I heard that for Miss Shangguan's birthday banquet this time, half of the guards are elites transferred from the Hall of Law Enforcement at the last minute. You're insulting their abilities in front of the Hall Master, isn't that appropriate? Lin Yi's face was as calm as ever. Nan Tianba's expression couldn't help but change. After hearing Lin Yi's words, he felt like he was indirectly scolding the locust tree. At this moment, Yuzhe, who was behind them, suddenly spoke up. Eldest martial uncle, second martial uncle, disciple's master died mysteriously. This Lin Yi is one of the suspects. Martial uncles, please help disciple find out the truth and let master's soul rest in peace. His sudden interruption was naturally to give Nan Tianba a way out. At the same time, it also didn't dispel their suspicions towards Lin Yi. Although their focus was currently on Kang Mingming, they didn't dare to act rashly because of Xu Lingchong. Now that Lin Yi, the second suspect, had bumped into the muzzle, they obviously couldn't let go of this opportunity. Unknowingly, Yuzhe had always felt that Lin Yi's temperament was very similar to Lin Er's. As a cultivator, His strong intuition was very accurate most of the time. As soon as these words came out, Nan Tianbar's eyes suddenly lit up. He secretly gave Yu Zhe a look of praise and immediately said righteously, when third brother Nan Tianyong died, the higher-ups of the three great pavilions clearly stated that they would investigate this matter. However, there hasn't been any progress. Taking advantage of today's opportunity, Hall Master Gong Yang might as well investigate this Lin Yi. With your ability, if you want to find out anything, it should be very simple. Chapter 3985. However, for Lin Yi, once the soul-searching technique was used, it would be equivalent to a disaster. No one could save him in this situation, not even Shanghai Lena. Although Shanghai Lena was a young miss, once it involved the powerful people present, her words might not be that effective, unless her grandfather, Shanghai Tianhua, personally came forward. However, as the dignified pavilion master of Soaring Sky Pavilion, how could Shanghai Tianhua stand up for Lin Yi, a nobody from Blue Cloud Pavilion? If it really didn't work, they could only try to create chaos and escape. Compared to being discovered by the soul-searching technique, this would give them a slim chance of survival. At this moment, a familiar girl's voice suddenly sounded from behind them. Lin Yi is this lady's savior, who dares to use the soul-searching technique on him? Following the appearance of the person, everyone's eyes instantly focused on her. Even a legendary figure like Ram Jie was only slightly inferior. The person who came was the main character of this birthday banquet, Shanghai Lena. Lin Yi's heart immediately relaxed. As long as the soul-searching technique was not used, Shanghai Lena came forward to help him, so it would still be effective. Even if Nan Tianbar and the others wanted to punish him, they probably wouldn't dare to go against the will of this young miss on this day. However, the reaction of Nan Tianbar and the others was beyond Lin Yi's expectations. Young Miss Shangguan, even if this Lin Yi is your savior, he could also be the real murderer who killed this seat's third brother. There is no conflict between the two. Pavilion Master Shangguan had personally ordered for this matter to be investigated. Does young miss want to let your grandfather's order become empty words? Nan Tianbar said forcefully. After joining hands with Xu Yuanjing, who was behind Xu Lingchong, their side was already very clear. Since the background had nothing to do with Shanghai Tianhua, then there was naturally no need to care too much about a little girl like Shanghai Lena. This Lin Yi. In a hurry, Shanghai Lena didn't know what to say. Shanghai Lena could only helplessly look at Lin Yi. She wanted to help Lin Yi out of this predicament, but this place was not like the ordinary law enforcers she had faced in the law enforcement hall last time. Instead, it was Nan Tianbar, who had an extraordinary status. If he could not stand on his feet, then even she, the eldest daughter of the Shangguan family, would be helpless. Although she sometimes behaved like a willful and ignorant little girl, when it came to important matters related to her grandfather, Shangguan Tianhua, she would never take it lightly. At this time, if she said something wrong, it could be used as a pretext by others, which would affect her grandfather's image and status. This kind of thing had happened a lot in the past. Lin Yi gently shook his head at Shanghai Lena. He signaled her not to say too much. After all, she was still a little girl. At this time, the more she said, the more mistakes she would make. Instead of being bullied by the other side, it was better to wait and see. Seeing that Shanghai Lena was choked by his words, Nan Tianbar and the others couldn't help but look at each other with a smile. Then, he said to Ram Jie, Hall Master Ram, you are the #1 person in charge of the three great pavilions' punishment. Right now, the real suspect, Lin Yi, is right in front of you. If you just ignore him like this, I feel that it is quite inappropriate. What do you say? With just a few words, the situation was completely under Nan Tianbar's control. It could be seen that this guy was not as rough as he looked on the surface, and that fiery and brainless. Lin Yi could only secretly be on guard. Things had suddenly developed to this point, and even if Shanghai Lena personally came forward, she still wouldn't be able to help him out of this predicament. It was really a bit difficult to get off the tiger. Right now, he could only take one step at a time. However, at this time, Ram Jie glanced at Nan Tianbar. He said indifferently, Nan Tianbar, when did it become your turn to teach me what I need to do? With just one simple sentence, Nan Tianbar and the others, who were originally complacent, suddenly had their faces collapse. They were so numb that they were confused by this arrogant brat that they forgot that Ramjia wasn't someone they could casually order around. If they really pointed fingers at Ramjia and violated Ramjia's taboo, Lin Yi would probably be fine. Instead, they would be the ones facing a disaster. Moreover, the reason why Nan Tianba's case didn't make any progress at all was actually the result of Ramjia's incitement. He felt that this case wasn't important, so no one would investigate it. Naturally, there wouldn't be any results. Therefore, when Nan Tianba's words fell into Ramjia's ears, it was the same as reprimanding him for not doing his job. With Ramjia's arrogance, it would be strange if he nodded his head. Ah, no. Nan Tianba hurriedly tried to explain. However, before he could explain, Ramjia suddenly stood up without any warning. An incomparably majestic and overbearing aura instantly pressed down on top of his head. Nan Tianba was caught off guard. His knees went soft and he almost knelt down in front of everyone. He forcefully clenched his teeth and supported his body. However, Southern Skygate and Yu Zhe, who were behind him, didn't have this kind of strength. With a putong sound, their knees hit the floor and they spat out blood. No! Is it your fault, or is it my fault? Ramjia coldly glanced at him, then said meaningfully, "This is just a small warning for you. I don't have that much patience, and I'm too lazy to care about this bullshit. As for the question I asked you before, give me an answer within 3 days. Otherwise, you should be very clear about the consequences." After saying this, Ramjia stood up and left, leaving the crowd with an unruly and domineering back. This person was truly extraordinary. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but admire him. To be honest, a man as tyrannical and arrogant as Ramjia was rarely seen in this world. However, what made Lin Yi even more curious was the matter between Ramjia and Nan Tianba. In such a short period of time, it seemed like this was the second time he had mentioned it. Hehe, this time you've kicked an iron plate on the cold-faced ghost. Serves you right. Shanghai Lena rejoiced in their misfortune. As for the little curly bear that came along with her and was currently hanging on Lin Yi's neck, it swaggered its claws at Nan Tianba and the others. Nan Tianba's face turned ashen from anger, but he couldn't do anything. He could only let out a cold snort and silently pulled Southern Skygate and Yu Zhe up from the ground. After all, this was Shangguan Lena's birthday banquet. Because he was the one in the right, he couldn't be blamed for not giving this Missy any face. However, if he dared to throw a tantrum now, it would be too much. If this matter were to fall into Shangguan Tianhua's ears, he would definitely suffer the consequences. Chapter 3986. Lin Yi took a deep look at Nan Tianba and the others, then turned around and followed Shanghai Lena. Although these people were intimidated by Ramjia, if he continued to stay here, these people might take the risk out of desperation. Nan Tianba had once told Lin Yi that he also knew the soul-searching technique. Although his realm wasn't as high as Ramjia's, even if it was the most basic soul-searching technique, he still had to be careful. Before he had enough strength, Lin Yi felt that it was better to have less contact with these people. Watching Lin Yi and Shanghai Lena leave, Nan Tianba's eyes couldn't help but spit fire. To be honest, they didn't really suspect Lin Yi. It was just that Nan Tianba didn't like Lin Yi, so he used it as a pretext to make a fuss. After all, they had tried to investigate Lin Yi several times before, but to no avail. Therefore, even if Lin Yi still had flaws, their thinking had inevitably fallen into the wrong zone. Especially when Lin Yi pushed the boat with the current and shifted the biggest suspicion onto Kang Mingming. At least before they investigated Kang Mingming, they wouldn't turn around and suspect Lin Yi. This time, it could only be said that Lin Yi's luck wasn't good. Sitting together with a prominent person like Ramjia had inexplicably provoked Nan Tianba's dissatisfaction, which was why he encountered this unexpected crisis. Following Shanghai Lena, they went to the 3rd floor. This was the lounge that Hua Yang restaurant had prepared for this young miss. Aside from the outside being heavily guarded, there weren't any unnecessary people in the room. For Lin Yi, this could save him a lot of unnecessary trouble. After asking Lin Yi to sit down, Shangguan Lana reminded him seriously, "Little junior brother, that ugly black-faced guy just now, although he can't be compared with a pervert like Cold-Face Ghost, he is still very powerful. Don't underestimate him. My grandfather once privately commented on the new generation of the 3 pavilions, and this guy is ranked in the top 10 troublesome people. So, little disciple, if you meet this person in the future, it's better to stay away. Top 10 of the new generation of the 3 pavilions? Thank you for the reminder, little disciple sister. I'll remember it. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. When mentioning the new generation of the 3 pavilions, the first person that came to mind would be the head of the Law Enforcement Hall, Ram Jie. Anyone else in front of him would pale in comparison. But this didn't mean that the other new generation masters weren't strong. Gong Yongjie was a rare exception. His target was a legend like Zhong Lijiu, and the other new generation masters were nothing to scoff at. As for the other new generation of the 3 pavilions, they were still the future pillars of the 3 pavilions. Whether it was status or strength, no ordinary person could shake them. Shangguan Tianhua was the pavilion master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Even if it was a private evaluation that was never made public, its credibility and authenticity were not inferior to the authority of the 3 great pavilions. For Nan Tianba to be able to be ranked in the top 10, it could be seen that he was not a simple character. At least up until now, Lin Yi was just an ant that couldn't even be stepped on. If he wanted to have the strength to deal with a threat like this, then he would need to do so. You're still a newcomer. There's still a long way to go. But little disciple brother, you don't have to be too afraid. You're still a newcomer. Unless you meet that ugly big black face monster alone outside, he won't dare to come looking for trouble. Shanghai Lena comforted him with a smile. The protection of the new generation of the 3 pavilions wasn't just for show. Although in terms of influence and power, the Welcome Pavilion was ranked last among the big pavilions. As long as they stayed within the territory of the Welcome Pavilion, no one would dare to touch these newcomers. Even Nan Tianba was no exception. Unless he wanted to be wanted by the Elders Guild. Yes, I know. Lin Yi nodded, but didn't comment on this. Normally, as a newcomer, as long as he stayed in the Welcome Pavilion, he would be able to sleep peacefully. But this was on the premise that no one would be able to find a loophole. Otherwise, people would always be able to find a loophole. To forge iron, one had to be strong. In the end, only when one's own strength was truly strong would they be able to sleep peacefully. Of course, there was no need to explain these concerns to Shanghai Lena. Lin Yi immediately took out an exquisite spirit jade box from his bosom. This was what he had carefully selected at the Hong Chamber of Commerce last time. He handed it to Shanghai Lena and said, "Little senior sister, this is a small token of my appreciation. I wish you a happy birthday." Wow, what a beautiful box. Shanghai Lena's eyes lit up. She was pleasantly surprised and said, "This is the texture of high-grade spirit jades. The carving technique is also very good. It should be a master-level craftsmanship. Senior sister, I wanted such a treasure box. Thank you, little junior brother, I like it very much." Seeing Shanghai Lena's fondness for the box, Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. This spirit jade box had indeed cost him a lot of spirit jades, but how could his gift be just a box? The spirit jade box was just a foil. What was inside was the real gift. "Little senior sister, why don't you open it and take a look?" Lin Yi smiled and pointed at the box. Shanghai Lena was slightly stunned. In her opinion, with Lin Yi's qualifications as a newcomer of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, it was already very rare and very thoughtful for him to give her such an exquisite spirit jade box. She was quite touched. However, from what Lin Yi said, could it be that there was something else inside? Shanghai Lena adjusted her breathing. With the mood of witnessing the surprise, she wanted to slowly open the spirit jade box. However, she didn't expect that before she could open it, the little curly bear next to her had already snatched the spirit jade box from her hand. Shanghai Lena suddenly let out a soft cry and hurriedly wanted to snatch it back. At this moment, Xu Lingchong happened to walk to the door of the room and happened to hear Shanghai Lena's soft cry. He hurriedly kicked the door open and said anxiously, "Little junior sister, what's wrong?" Only then did Shanghai Lena recover from her shock. She couldn't be bothered to chase after the little curly bear anymore. She covered her mouth and stuck out her tongue. Pretending to be calm, she said, "What's wrong?" There's nothing wrong here. Senior brother Shu, don't you think it's improper for you to barge into this lady's room? Shu Lingchong suspiciously looked at the two of them. He had just heard the servants say that Shanghai Lena had personally brought Lin Yi up to the 3rd floor. A man and a woman were alone in a room. He was afraid that there would be some scandal, so he hurriedly chased after them. In the end, he saw the situation in front of him. Lin Yi didn't seem to be abnormal. He still had a calm and pretentious demeanor. However, Shanghai Lena, this young lady, was somewhat abnormal. Chapter 3987. All of this was truly too easy to cause one's imagination to run wild. Especially since Shu Lingchong's first impression was that this kid, Lin Yi, had always wanted to be a toad that wanted to eat swan meat, and it was rare for him to have a chance to be alone in a room with Shangguan Lena. Could it be that this beast would easily let it go? In Shu Lingchong's mind, the scene from earlier was quickly restored to another scene as a matter of course, and that was Lin Yi, this bastard, taking advantage of the fact that Shangguan Lena wasn't paying attention and had secretly kissed Shangguan Lena forcefully. When he thought up to here, Shu Lingchong instantly felt inconsolable. Motherfucker, I've chased after this little girl for so many years, yet I haven't even been able to hold her hand once. In the end, I actually allowed Lin Yi, this grassroot that's pretending to be pretentious, to seize the initiative. This sort of thing is intolerable. Shangguan Lena had always been Shu Lingchong's woman, and it was related to his great cause in the future. No one was allowed to encroach upon her, and if anyone dared to touch even a strand of hair on her, then it would be an irreconcilable enmity with him, young Master Shu. So, when he just noticed a tiny sign earlier, Shu Lingchong had thought of ways to destroy the relationship between Shangguan Lena and Lin Yi, and he wanted to nip this practically impossible possibility in the bud. He originally thought that he could already sit back and relax, yet he never imagined that such a thing would actually occur right under his eyes. Even though he and Shanghai Lena hadn't established any status yet, under the tacit consent of the parents of both parties, Shu Lingchong had long since taken Shanghai Lena to be his woman. Presently, in this sort of situation, was it any different from being made a cuckold by Lin Yi? Lin Yi, this young master will make living worse than death for you. Instantly, Shu Lingchong was actually stimulated by his own guess to the point of losing control of his emotions, and his eyes were completely red as he wanted to make a move against Lin Yi. In fact, he had not completely lost his mind. As long as he revealed the fact that Lin Yi had violated and molested Shangguan Lena, even if he were to crush Lin Yi's bones and scatter his ashes on the spot, he would not need to take any responsibility. Lin Yi was shocked. He didn't have the time to think about why this guy suddenly went berserk. He quickly pulled Shanghai Lena and wanted to retreat. After all, his opponent was a well-established expert in the great perfection of the building foundation stage, and Lin Yi himself was only in the middle stage of the building foundation stage. If he did not use his trump card, the super true chi bomb, he would certainly be overwhelmed if he fought the opponent recklessly. However, Shangguan Lan was one step ahead of him. She stood in front of him and shouted at Shu Lingchong, "What do you want to do? Little junior brother is my important guest. If you dare to attack him, I will kill him. If you dare to make a move against him, I'll go tell Grandpa." Shu Lingchong's figure paused, and he looked past Shanghai Lena to look at Lin Yi. Immediately after, his gaze became even more sinister, and he said half mockingly, "Junior sister Lan if he is your important guest, then what am I?" Unexpectedly, Shanghai Lena's big missy temper flared up, and she didn't give him the slightest bit of face as she said, "What does the matter between this young lady and junior brother have to do with you? Do I need to explain it to an outsider like you?" Hearing this, Shu Lingchong couldn't help but laugh out of extreme anger, and he nervously pointed at Lin Yi, then pointed at himself. He sneered and said, "I'm an outsider, and you and this grassroot slut are on the same side." "Good, very good, well said. Who are you calling a grassroot slut? I'll give you a chance. Quickly apologize to my junior brother." Shanghai Lena was instantly enraged as well. She didn't have many friends in the first place, and after experiencing all sorts of things before, in her heart, Lin Yi's position was already far from what an ordinary friend could compare to, and as for a hateful person like Shu Lingchong, he couldn't even be considered as a friend in her eyes. Her standpoint could be said to be clear at a glance. Unexpectedly, Shu Lingchong suddenly changed his expression into a cold and indifferent one, and he said coldly, "All the important figures downstairs have already arrived. Junior sister Lan if you have nothing to do with this grassroots slut, then you should go down as soon as possible. Don't let so many important figures wait for too long." Looking at Shu Lingchong's back figure that turned around and left, Shanghai Lena's beautiful face instantly flushed red with anger. Previously, she cooperated with Lin Yi's act and said that she hated Lin Yi, but that hateful person like Shu Lingchong actually dared to insult Lin Yi in front of her, and that was unforgivable. But unfortunately, the other party was after all one of the few young masters in the Soaring Sky Pavilion, and now he was even the senior brother in charge of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Even she, the eldest miss of the Shangguan family, couldn't do anything to Shu Lingchong, and it wasn't easy to help Lin Yi vent his anger. "Junior sister, I'm sorry, I've caused trouble for you," Lin Yi said with a sigh behind her. "How could it be? Junior brother, don't think too much. I, your senior sister, originally wanted to fall out with this hateful person, but because of my grandfather's feelings, I didn't say it out loud. Today is also good, so that he won't come and bother me for no reason in the future." Shanghai Lena quickly explained and comforted him. Lin Yi secretly shook his head. Shu Lingchong didn't seem like a person who would give up so easily. For a young master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion like him, the attraction of Shanghai Lena to him was definitely not as simple as a woman's beauty. Even if Shanghai Lena openly fell out with him, he wouldn't just let go. To be precise, the family force behind him wouldn't allow him to just let go like this. In this kind of situation, if Shu Lingchong continued to lose control of his emotions and went berserk, perhaps it would be easier to deal with him. After all, the surroundings were heavily guarded. If this guy was only coming for him, Lin Yi believed that he would be able to hold on until the guards came to rescue him. At that time, it wouldn't be easy for Shu Lingchong to clean up the mess. On the contrary, looking at the current situation, Shu Lingchong seemed to have lost control of his emotions, but in the end, he quickly regained his composure. This was even more terrifying, and it was enough to prove that this young Master Shu's shrewdness was far from that of an ordinary person. The calmness in front of him was precisely the precursor of a storm. "Junior sister, I think you might have to be a little more careful. In the future, when you come into contact with Shu Lingchong, it's best to be more vigilant," Lin Yi reminded. After today's incident, he, Lin Yi, would definitely be the main target of Shu Lingchong's revenge. However, Shanghai Lena, this young miss, even if she had the protection of her grandfather, Shanghai Tianhua, she might not necessarily be able to sleep peacefully. Once she relaxed even a little, this scheming young Master Shu might take the risk out of desperation. Shanghai Lena was stunned, then she waved her fist and bared her two little canine teeth. This lady isn't afraid of him. If he dares to have any crooked thoughts, this lady will cut him up. On the other hand, the little curly bear at the side very cooperatively sat down and made a cutting motion, causing Lin Yi to involuntarily perspire with shame. He hadn't seen it before, but this master and pet pair were really fierce enough. Chapter 3988. After all, even if they were open-minded, they couldn't stop others from thinking the wrong way. If Shangguan Lena's reputation was affected because of this, there would be endless troubles in the future. When they came to the first floor, as Shu Lingchong said, the hall of Huiyang restaurant was already full of distinguished guests. Although everyone deliberately restrained their momentum, Lin Yi could still feel that no one present was ordinary. Especially those big shots who were qualified to sit on the main seat, each of them was as deep as the abyss, as if they were sacred. In front of them, Lin Yi could only have a feeling that he was looking up at a high mountain. Among these big shots, there were many faces that Lin Yi had seen before, such as Xu Yuanjing, the third elder of Towering Pavilion, Zhao Hongbo, the fourth elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion, the bald elder who guarded the back mountain hall, and Ram Jie, whom he had dealt with before, were also among them. Lin Yi even saw an old acquaintance among them, Hong Zhong of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. This was quite out of Lin Yi's expectation, but after thinking about it, it was reasonable. As the full agent of the Hong Chamber of Commerce in the North Island, it was natural for Hong Zhong to be close to the top management of the three pavilions. What's more, no matter his identity or status, he was not under the elders of the three pavilions, so he was naturally qualified to occupy a main seat. However, Although Lin Yi was an acquaintance of him, he made friends with him as Lin too. Now, Lin Yi appeared in person, so Hong Zhong might not be able to recognize him. With the appearance of Shanghai Lena, the people who were still greeting each other instantly focused their eyes on the protagonist of today's birthday party. They all smiled, and there was a bit of amazement in their eyes. As the protagonist, Shanghai Lena's dress was no different from usual today. She did not deliberately dress up, nor did she deliberately decorate herself, but even so, it was still difficult to conceal her natural beauty. Under the deliberately created dreamy atmosphere of the audience. Under the deliberately created dreamy atmosphere, she was like a fairy descending to the world, dazzling and dazzling. However, while everyone's eyes were focused on Shanghai Lena, there were still many people who noticed Lin Yi who came down from behind her. After a slight daze, there was a burst of whispers. As for Lin Yi, who was a complete stranger to them, apart from old acquaintances like Shu Lingchong and the Southern Skygate, the others were completely clueless. Suddenly seeing him appear together with Miss Shangguan, of course there were all sorts of guesses and discussions going on in private. At this moment, Shangguan Tianhua, who was sitting on the main seat in the middle, waved at Lena in a half-doting and half-scolding manner. "Little Lana, why don't you quickly come over and greet all the grandpas and uncles? You've made so many elders wait for you. You've really gained a lot of face today. Little junior brother, find a place to sit down first. I'll look for you later." Shangguan Lena turned her head and whispered to Lin Yi. Then, she brought the little curly bear with her. She excitedly trotted over to him. When Shu Lingchong saw this scene from afar, he couldn't help but be infuriated to the point that he was burning with rage. After seeing every little action of Shanghai Lena and Lin Yi, he felt that the two of them were doing something sneaky, which was intolerable. To think that I thought this little girl was pure and cute, pure and inviolable. I didn't expect her to be such a slut with a unique taste. I'm really fucking blind. Shu Lingchong fiercely spat on the ground. A bold plan quietly took shape in his mind. No matter what the reason was, he could not let Shanghai Lena escape from his palm. Absolutely not. For this, he would not hesitate to use any means and take a little risk. Currently, the great hall was filled with a joyous and harmonious atmosphere. Even though there were some irreconcilable grudges between the various major figures present, none of them could reveal any of it. At the very least, in front of everyone, they had to temporarily force themselves to smile. After all, they had to give face to a super big shot like Shangguan Tianhua, and they had no choice but to give him face. In the birthday banquet, other than letting the many big shots gather together to exchange greetings and build up their friendship, there was also an indispensable highlight according to the usual practice. Today was no exception under Shu Lingchong's arrangement, and that was to present gifts to the main character of the birthday banquet, Shanghai Lena. According to the status and strength of each other, everyone present gave gifts to Shanghai Lena in succession. This was not only to express their sincerity, but at the same time, it was also the best opportunity to show off their respective strengths. Inevitably, the birthday banquet would eventually more or less degenerate into a grand gathering for everyone to compare. The rarer and more precious gifts in hand represented the greater power of the person. In the future, their position in the eyes of many big shots would naturally be higher. As for those slightly shabby and ordinary gifts, they could not be taken out at all. Even if they were taken out, they would only make a fool of themselves. But this time, under Shu Lingchong's deliberate arrangement, not only did they need to give gifts in front of everyone, but they even specially rented 3 appraisal experts from the major chambers of commerce to comment on each gift in public. To put it nicely, it was a birthday appraisal meeting. In this way, the atmosphere of competition at the scene was much stronger than before. After listening to Shu Lingchong's announcement, the expressions on everyone's faces were either happy or sad, which could be described as wonderful. The top big shots of the North Island were gathered together, and this was an extremely rare opportunity. Everyone wanted to stand out on such an occasion and leave a deep impression on the many big shots, yet no one wanted to lose face at such a time. Once they left behind a stingy evaluation, then they would complain incessantly. If they knew there was such a segment earlier, then it was reckoned that everyone present would absolutely spare no effort to present the best rare and precious treasures. If they were able to leave a good impression on the many big shots, then it wouldn't be a loss no matter how much they spent. But unfortunately, when Shu Lingchong sent the invitations to them, he'd done something in the process and treated them differently. Those who had a close relationship with the Shu clan received a reminder at the same time they received the invitation, whereas those who didn't have a good relationship with the Shu clan or even had a bad relationship with the Shu clan were completely unaware of this. It was even to the extent that they were deliberately misled to think that the birthday banquet this time was just a formality, and there was utterly no need to take the trouble to prepare any precious gifts. Thus, those who received the reminder could show their faces and stand out, whereas those who were deliberately misled would truly be in a tragedy this time. They could only wait in perturbed torment as they waited for themselves to become the laughingstock of everyone present. Chapter 3989. In a sense, neglecting this birthday banquet was equivalent to neglecting the Shangguan First Young Miss, and neglecting the Shangguan First Young Miss was equivalent to neglecting the Soaring Sky Pavilion's pavilion master, Shangguan Tianhua. The dangers involved were not something that could be described clearly with just a few words. Chong'e, you did well today. In the future, when the Shu family is in your hands, I can be a little more at ease. In the process of presenting the gift, Shu Yuanjing deliberately got up and walked to the side, nodding approvingly at his grandson. In his view, although Shu Lingchong's little tricks were still considered immature, as long as he had this awareness, he would not be too far away from supporting the future of the Shu family. Thank you for your praise, grandfather. I will definitely continue to work hard to protect the future of the Shu family. Shu Lingchong was immediately overjoyed by the praise. Taking over the Shu family had always been his long-cherished wish. Today, he was able to obtain the approval of his grandfather, Shu Yuanjing, which proved that he was a big step closer to this goal. Shu Yuanjing laughed happily and said, however, Chong'e, you must firmly remember that schemes are only a small way. If you want to take charge of big things, you must grasp the key people. Otherwise, no matter how hard you work, it will be in vain. After saying that, the old man pointed at Lena, who was intimately snuggling up to Shangguan Tianhua. Shu Lingchong nodded and clenched his fists meaningfully. Grandfather, don't worry. She will definitely not escape from the palm of your grandson's hand. Definitely not. It's great that you have this confidence. Don't let grandfather down. Shu Yuanjing patted him on the shoulder and turned back to the main seat. Shu Lingchong took a deep breath. When he looked at Lena in the distance again, there was a hint of coldness and cruelty in his eyes. If it was before today. If Lena still had a goddess-like position in his heart, then after what had happened just now, this goddess had quickly degraded into a slut who could be used by anyone. And if it was just to deal with such a slut, there was naturally no need to be too polite. At this time, the gift-giving session was coming to an end. Kang Mingming said eagerly, "Young Master Shu, can I take out my gift now?" Shu Lingchong nodded slightly. This was the plan that he had discussed with Kang Mingming in advance. He immediately came forward and introduced on her behalf, "Dear elders and friends, next is to present the birthday gift to junior sister Lan. He is the new deacon from our welcome pavilion, Kang Mingming." Kang Mingming quickly raised his head and puffed out his chest, pretending to be calm as he slowly opened the wooden box in his hand. There was an elixir carefully placed inside. Everyone present couldn't help but discuss spiritedly. For a newcomer to appear in the welcoming pavilion to appear here was already a piece of news that was neither big nor small. Moreover, this newcomer had taken out a pretty good gift, a high-grade foundation building pill. This junior brother Kang, after hearing that he was fortunate to be able to attend junior sister Lan's birthday party, under my help and supervision, he finally refined this high-grade foundation building pill by himself for 10 days and 10 nights. It will be a birthday gift to junior sister Lan. Shu Lingchong spoke frankly with assurance, personally fighting for Kang Mingming's reputation. When everyone heard this, they obviously paid more attention to Kang Mingming. A mere newcomer from the welcome pavilion naturally wouldn't be able to enter their eyes. But if this newcomer was an alchemist and could personally refine a high-quality foundation building pill, then his value would be huge. One should know that even in the alchemy hall where alchemists gathered, there were not many alchemists who could refine foundation building pill, and those with high quality could be counted on one's fingers. Looking at it from this point of view, this new alchemist named Kang Jiaoming could almost jump into the ranks of the elite alchemists with his skills alone. Even Lin Yi, who knew Kang Mingming very well, was quite surprised at this moment. At this moment, he could not help but be surprised. If what Xu Lingchong said was true, then he had really underestimated this guy in the past. With his current strength at the early stage of foundation establishment, being able to concoct a high-quality foundation establishment pill meant that this guy had some talent in the field of alchemy. Everyone present was extraordinary. This feeling of being appreciated by everyone simply made Kang Mingming feel like he was walking on air. He was so happy that he almost couldn't extricate himself. However, he still remembered the instructions given to him by Xu Lingchong in advance. He immediately stood up and bowed. "Young Master Xu is overpraising me. As a newcomer in the Soaring Sky Pavilion, I'm doing my best for Miss Shangguan. This is all within my duty and I don't deserve such praise." These words of Kang Mingming could be said to be humble and appropriate. It made all the big shots present praise him incessantly. They secretly thought that if this guy was trained in the future, he might be able to achieve great things. After gaining enough limelight, Kang Mingming suddenly changed the topic and turned to Lin Yi's direction. "Newcomer Lin, the newcomer of the welcoming pavilion is here today. You and I, it's rare for us to have the opportunity to attend Miss Shangguan's birthday banquet. You should also show your appreciation. I know that you've always been amazing. Today, you can't embarrass our welcoming pavilion. Why don't you take out any gifts to let everyone have a good look?" The people present were all smart people. The intention revealed by Kang Mingming's words fell into their eyes. They immediately revealed a look of watching a good show. Anyway, it had nothing to do with them. No matter who was embarrassed, it was none of their business. However, Lin Yi shook his head lightly. "I'm sorry, I've already given my gift to Miss Shangguan in private." Kang Mingming was slightly stunned. Xu Lingchong, who was next to him, chuckled and said, "You gave it to junior sister Lan in private?" Everyone present gave gifts together. "You're just a newcomer, why do you have to be special? I heard that you're an alchemist like junior brother Kang. What gift did you give? Why not take it out and let everyone evaluate it? After all, there's competition to improve." Xu Lingchong's dignified words immediately forced Lin Yi into a corner where he couldn't refuse. Everyone's eyes then shifted to Shanghai Lena. Shanghai Lena secretly thought that something was wrong. Because she was interrupted by the little curly bear just now, she hadn't opened the gift in the spiritual jade box. But even so, she could guess that with Lin Yi's humble background as a new disciple of Clear Cloud Pavilion, it was basically impossible for him to give a gift better than a high-grade foundation building pellet. If he agreed just like that, then this little junior brother of hers would lose out to that annoying subordinate of his. Chapter 3990. This traitorous Xiao Bai. Shanghai Lena was speechless. Now, she didn't have to worry about what excuse she could use to get out of the situation. She had to think of a way to smooth things over for Lin Yi. However, the reaction of the audience was far beyond Shanghai Lena's expectations. Not only was there no ridicule as she had imagined, but instead, there was a collective gasp. Shanghai Lena was stunned. With the identity and status of the audience, everyone was knowledgeable. What kind of rare treasures hadn't they seen before? However, Lin Yi's gift was able to shock them all. This was a bit too much. However, when Shanghai Lena saw what was in the spiritual jade box, even she couldn't help but exclaim in disbelief. At this moment, in the spiritual jade box, there were 2 elixirs. Just like Kang Mingming's, they were both foundation establishment elixirs. However, the difference was that the 2 elixirs given by Lin Yi were covered with layers of mesmerizing elixir halo. They were actually the legendary and extremely rare Supreme Grade Foundation Establishment elixirs. Supreme Grade Foundation Establishment elixirs were miraculous elixirs that only the legendary super elixir refiners like Zhongliju could concoct. In the entire North Island Alchemy Hall, there might not be a single alchemist who could refine the Supreme Grade Foundation building pill. If an elixir refiner like Kang Mingming, who could concoct top-grade foundation establishment elixirs, could be regarded as an elite, then an elixir refiner who could concoct supreme-grade foundation establishment elixirs would undoubtedly be at the master level. For a moment, No one in the audience spoke. Even Xu Lingchong and Kang Mingming, who deliberately provoked this scene to make a fool of Lin Yi, were shocked speechless. This is fake, right? Kang Mingming couldn't help but mutter. Spending 10 days and 10 nights to refine a high-grade foundation building pill, this was already the limit of what he could achieve, and this was even with the help of Xu Lingchong. Wanting to refine a high-grade foundation building pill, in his opinion, was simply impossible. At least it was absolutely not an extravagant hope for an alchemist of his level. But Lin Yi, this guy, from the secular world until now, had been in contact with him for so long, it could be said that they knew each other inside out. He had never heard of this guy having such a heaven-defying talent in alchemy, and even more did not believe that this guy had such a profound attainment in alchemy. How could it be possible for him to suddenly refine a top-grade foundation building pill? No matter how he thought about it, it was not scientific at all. It did not make sense at all. As soon as Kang Mingming's words came out, the audience couldn't help but burst into an uproar. If these 2 top-grade foundation building pills were made by a big shot here, it would not be surprising, but now it was made by a newcomer. This was too shocking. 2 top-grade foundation building pills, not to mention that they were priceless, even if they were calculated according to the lowest price in the past, they were worth at least thousands of spirit jades. This was not something that an ordinary newcomer could afford. Xu Lingchong was also immersed in shock, but when he heard this, his eyes suddenly lit up. He gave Kang Mingming a look and said, "Junior brother Kang, you are an alchemist, and you have personally refined the foundation building pill. You have the most right to say whether this kind of pill is real or fake. Today is such an important occasion, we can't let some people with ulterior motives fool us. It's better to check carefully." Seeing that the big shots present had no intention of stopping him, Kang Mingming nodded knowingly, and immediately walked over. Before the little curly bear could react, he snatched the foundation building pill together with the spirit jade box. At this time, Shanghai Lena wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. Kang Mingming pretended to pick up one of the pills and looked at it, and then showed an expression of as expected. He sneered and said loudly, "I knew that this guy Lin Yi is not a good person. When he was in the secular world, he only knew how to fake things. Now he actually dares to do this. He really doesn't know what's good for him. Everyone, don't be fooled by him. These 2 so-called top-grade foundation building pills are actually fake pills with a shell." After that, in the exclamation of the audience, Kang Mingming suddenly threw the 2 pills on the ground, and without saying a word, he stepped on them. After stepping on them, he didn't forget to twist them hard. Looking at this scene, Lin Yi couldn't help but twitch his eyelids. Kang Mingming really can't change his ways. He had already done the same thing when he was in the secular world. He didn't expect that he didn't learn his lesson now. Now that the occasion was changed, he actually did the same thing again. The audience suddenly fell into a dead silence. Many people at this moment looked at Lin Yi with a bit of hostility. They were all big shots. If they were really cheated by a lowly villain like Lin Yi with fake pills under their noses today, they would become a laughingstock in the future. Xu Lingchong and Kang Mingming secretly smiled at each other. Anyway, Lin Yi was alone here, and there wouldn't be any big shots who would stand up for him. Even if these 2 top-grade foundation building pills were originally real, they were now fake. The 2 pills had been stepped on by Kang Mingming to pieces and were beyond recognition. Unless it was a very knowledgeable expert who got hold of it and carefully examined it, ordinary people wouldn't be able to tell whether it was real or fake. But for these big shots present, who would risk losing face to come and personally examine it for the sake of Lin Yi, who they didn't know? This move was called taking the initiative to gain the upper hand. As long as no one stood up for Lin Yi, then there would be no evidence. However, just when the 2 of them thought that they had succeeded and were ready to enjoy Lin Yi's sullen expression, a figure suddenly appeared beside Kang Mingming like the wind. He pushed Kang Mingming away and picked up the pill that was stepped on by his foot to carefully examine it. Lin Yi was originally going to get up and settle it himself, but after seeing this person appear, he calmly sat back down with a smile. The person who rushed out to examine the pill could be considered an acquaintance of Lin Yi. It was the spiritual flower manager from the Pill Hall's spiritual medicine nursery. "Ah, spiritual flower manager, what are you doing?" I already said that this is a fake pill. Kang Ming suddenly felt that something was wrong and couldn't help but sweat profusely. He hurriedly wanted to stop it. He really didn't expect that there would actually be someone who would come to personally examine the pill. Fake pill? The spiritual flower manager was instantly amused and sneered. Whether it's the color, the medicinal smell, the pill halo, or the texture, which one of them can you tell that this is a fake pill with an outer shell? Such top-grade foundation building pills, you actually dared to step on 2 of them. You are fucking wasting the pill. Someone like you is worthy of being an alchemist. Chapter 3991. No, this, I. Kang Ming still wanted to rack his brain to argue, but the spiritual flower manager did not give him the chance. He raised his hand and slapped him, sending him flying. Bang! In front of the spiritual flower manager, Kang Ming could not resist at all. He was slapped so hard that he flew for dozens of feet. Then, he fell to the ground in a sorry state and could not get up for a long time. Faced with this sudden scene, everyone present was stunned. However, no one, including the important people present, said anything. Not only did they not reprimand the spiritual flower manager for attacking so brazenly, but the way they looked at Kang Ming was a little more angry, as if he was played in public. This spiritual flower manager was not as simple as being the head manager of the spirit medicine nursery. Not only did he have a strong background, but he was also a recognized genius in alchemy. As long as he had the heart, he would be a strong competitor for the next deputy leader of the Pill Hall. The reason why he sat in the position of the spirit medicine nursery's head manager, which was not very prominent in the eyes of outsiders, was because he had a special interest in cultivating elixirs. Secondly, it could be regarded as a rotation experience. After all, only after he had experience in all the important positions, he would have a deep understanding and control of the entire Pill Hall. Naturally, he would be more qualified and confident to compete for the leader of the Pill Hall in the future. If it was someone else who rashly questioned Kang Ming, the important people present might not believe it. However, since it was the spiritual flower manager, the weight of his words was naturally far greater than that of a new alchemist like Kang Ming. It was clear who they should listen to and who they should believe. After slapping Kang Ming, the spiritual flower manager took out a clean handkerchief from his chest and carefully picked up the 2 dregs that had been stepped on. He did not miss a single one. After that, the spirit flower manager spoke to Lin Yi from afar. Lin Yi, I happen to have 2 foundation pills here as well. The quality isn't as good as yours, but it's still a rare item. What do you think about exchanging them for yours? Lin Yi's 2 foundation building pills were just crushed by Kang Ming. They were a little dirty and ugly. If one did not dislike them, they could still be used normally. However, it was a little inappropriate to continue using them as a birthday gift for Shangguan Lena. The spirit flower manager's suggestion was a timely help to Lin Yi, and it wasn't a small favor at all. However, Lin Yi smiled and said, I have already given these 2 pills to Miss Shangguan. She is the owner of the pills. Spiritual flower manager, you seem to have asked the wrong person. When the spiritual flower manager heard this, she smiled sweetly and said, that's true. I was confused by Kang Ming. Junior sister Lan what do you say? Shangguan Lena pouted. This was a birthday gift given to her by Lin Yi. Of course, she did not want to exchange it with someone else. However, even if the effect was not affected, it was a little disgusting to let her take the pills that had been stepped on by Kang Ming. It was too much for her. All right then, I will exchange with you, senior brother Ling Hua. Shangguan Lena finally nodded and agreed. At this time, the little curly bear at the side carried a box and ran to the spiritual flower manager as if he was presenting a treasure. He lifted it up with great effort and kept crying. What do you mean? The spirit flower manager opened the box suspiciously and realized that it was the high-quality foundation building pill that Kang Jiaoming had just made. Shangguan Lena held her forehead and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Senior brother Ling Hua, it wants you to exchange this foundation building pill as well. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but smile. This little curly bear was really cunning. The spiritual flower manager smiled and squatted down. She touched the head of the little curly bear and said, Little guy, Only the best foundation building pill can be used to exchange for the best foundation building pill. The one in your hand can't be used. At best, it can only be considered a pile of dog shit. Woo woo. The little curly bear was obviously stunned for a moment. Then, it suddenly threw the foundation building pill in its hand far away and even rubbed its paws in disgust. It gave people the feeling that it had really grabbed dog poop, which made people not know whether to laugh or cry. As for this foundation building pill, it was just as the spiritual flower manager had said. It was just like a pile of dog poop. Even though it was thrown on the ground, no one cared about it. No one even took a second look at it. Kang Jiaoming was already coughing up blood as he watched the scene unfold before his eyes. This time, his vision darkened and he almost fainted from anger. This is the result of my hard work for 10 days and 10 nights. If I put it on the market, I can sell it for at least a few hundred spiritual jades. Is it worth it to be looked down upon like this? At this time, Shu Lingchong finally couldn't take it anymore. He suddenly said, "Spiritual flower manager, are you sure these 2 pills are real? Don't make a mistake and lose it. It's a small matter if you suffer a loss yourself. If you drag everyone here into becoming a laughingstock, that won't be good. What do you think?" After hearing this, the spiritual flower manager's elegant brows became slightly serious. She said coldly, "Why? Now that you've taken the position of the Soaring Sky Pavilion's manager, your confidence has changed. Do you even want to question my words?" These words could be said to be extremely domineering. However, everyone present seemed to be used to it. The spiritual flower manager usually looked effeminate and was a complete sissy. However, those who truly understood him knew that when it came to a critical moment, this person's domineering courage was definitely not below anyone else's. Of course, with his current status as the head manager of the Spirit Medicine Nursery, he didn't look as impressive as Shu Lingchong's Soaring Sky Pavilion's manager. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't dare to speak to Shu Lingchong in such a tone. However, in terms of background, he was stronger than Shu Lingchong. In terms of ability, he was stronger than Shu Lingchong. In terms of status, other than being the head manager of the Spirit Medicine Nursery, he was also a strong candidate for the next hall leader of the Pill Hall. One should know that the Pill Hall was the same as the Law Enforcement Hall. It was one of the top among all the halls in the 3 pavilions. If he could become the hall leader of the Pill Hall, he would immediately be on the same level as Ram Jie. Therefore, even if the spiritual flower manager was only a candidate, he could still look down on Shu Lingchong. Even Ram Jie would have to look at him differently in the future. After all, which cultivator didn't take medicinal pills? Who couldn't beg someone from the Pill Hall? At that time, one word from the Spirit Flower Hall leader would be enough to put you on the blacklist. Could you really count on Kang Ming to refine pills for you in the future?